Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Fairy Tale Guild House, Magnolia Town, year X784. It took us a week, but we finally finished it, Natsu said. Yup. Lucy smiled up at the pink-haired Dragonslayer she called a friend. Though I got a few splinters. Lucy frowned as she spread out her fingers, revealing the multitude of tiny pieces of wood that protruded from her skin. I gotcha. Natsu chuckled as he lit his hand on fire. Lucy's eyes widened as Natsu grabbed her hands, but just as she was about to scream in pain, she blinked in confusion. She looked down and saw Natsu's flames were their original bright orange and yellow, their light casting a bright orange glow on her surprised face. It's not burning, she uttered. Natsu removed his blazing hands from Lucy's and unclenched his fists, showing the accumulation of ashes that were once Lucy's splinters. I may have gotten better at fighting, but that's not to say I haven't gotten better at controlling my fire. Sensei was strict in my training to utilize fire in both ways, to be a way to help people through more than just beating the crap out of them, Natsu said. Lucy watched the fire Dragonslayer with wide brown eyes. Never had she thought in a time span of 3 months that Natsu would ever be able to gain the maturity and intelligence needed to be able to state something so surprisingly profound. Maybe he really has grown up, she thought. So, you're going to help people by burning away any splinters they get in their skin? You gonna be a nightlight too? Gray snickered. What did you say, snowman? And it's gone. Lucy's sweat dropped as she watched the fire and ice duo clash in a verbal battle once more. Come on you two, just stop bickering for once and just take the time to realize that our efforts finally produced something rather than reducing it to rubble, Kina said. The son of Igneal and student of Shiva immediately stopped as they caught on to the nature of the atmosphere about them. The mages of Fairy Tale turned and gazed at their new guild house. After having sent the Rune Knights in to question the guild the very next day after the guild war's conclusion, Fairy Tale was proven to have been innocent through the fact that they were actually provoked into taking arms and fighting the deceased Jose Borla's guild, as they were aware of Makarov's nature to defend his children when they were hurt. With the case being over and done with, the Magic Council had done its job to supply a large number of jewels so as to aid in the rebuilding of Makarov's guild, and so after much time and effort, the Fairy Tale Guild members had finally completed their architectural masterpiece, at least that was how they saw it. It was extravagantly different from the former building. While retaining the pyramid shape of the former building and consisting of 3 floors, this one strongly resembled a castle in appearance, having battlements on top of its 2 upper floors, while the ground floor had a more western-looking roof than the former building, consisting of many small, square tiles of different size. Over the battlements, several large torches were lined up. Topping the building in the last floor was a small, tower-like dome containing a large bell, which had a pointed roof made of tiles. 2 more towers were present at both sides of the entrance, these having elongated glass windows running through them and weathercocks shaped like Fairy Tale's symbol on their tile tops. The front part of the top floor housed a large banner with the guild's insignia on it, while 2 smaller banners placed at its sides, some meters away from it, bared, respectively, the Magic Council's emblem and an unknown symbol. The top floor seemed to be the most bare, while the middle one's front walls were intricately decorated and sported a pair of ornamental windows. The ground floor's roof bore a highly decorative balustrade on its top, and the floor itself possessed many small windows lined up along its front walls, together with wood reinforcements, while its edges bore large, rectangular wood beams. Surrounding the headquarters was a fence composed of stone overtopped by decorated railing, with some pillars overtopped by torches on its length and an open gate giving access to the guild, this possessing an upper part covered in tiles, with railing below it, bearing resemblance to an open portcullis, plus a large sign bearing the guild's name, with ornate decorations above it, including a pair of detailed statues of fairies, each wearing a dress and possessing a pair of wings and elongated ears sitting on their heads. In front of the building, inside the fence, was the so-called open-air cafe, containing a little over 2 dozen tables, each complete with a pair of benches at its sides, and with some of them bearing striped beach umbrellas. It looks just like how your designs were made out to be, master, Levi said with awe. The young blue-haired mage and her fellow members of Team Shadowgear, Jet and Dwa, had long been cleared from the hospital where they were put to recuperate during the whole escapade, and though they did not help with the construction work, per their master's request, they were able to watch as the building quickly rose from a simple flat piece of land into a mighty guild house that could be seen from nearly all parts of Magnolia Town. Well, of course it did. Makarov chuckled at the short blue-haired girl, it's my designs. The brown-eyed girl giggled at the elderly wizard saint's comment, and with that, the metaphorical ribbon was cut and the guild members stepped forth to enter their new home. However, they all paused as they were met with the sound of simultaneous footsteps. The sound of boots upon the cobblestone in perfect synchronization could only mean one thing for the strongest guild in Fury. The Rune Knights came forth from the streets, marching in 2 lines, 12 in each, making a grand total of 24 regular knights. A single man led the small platoon towards the newly built guild house before the young man stopped in front of the fairy tale members, the company halting just after their commander. Said commander was a young man who appeared to be 25, if not younger. The man had a light skin tone and an angular face with a rather square-like jaw. He was rather slim and was of seemingly average height for a man of his age. He had long green-black hair, tied in a large bun on the back of his head, with 2 bangs framing his face and an unruly tuft covering his forehead, and dark lavender-colored eyes. He had prominent cheekbones, and wore a pair of glasses with circular, elongated lenses. The young Rune Knight commander's outfit consisted of one which one would associate with those of a high-ranking council's associate, consisting of a long, bluish jacket, with pinkish edges and straps on the cuffs, over a high-collared shirt bearing the council's signature ankh-like symbol, white pants held up by a simple belt, white gloves, a white cape held closed by a buckle decorated by a large gem, and distinctive shoes, seemingly bearing a snake pattern. My. You lads keep getting younger every day. You're probably not even in your 30s and yet you are already a high-ranking commander in the Rune Knights, it seems. Makarov said with an impressed tone. The young man adjusted his glasses before speaking. I am Lahar, second in command of the Rune Knights of the Magic Council in Fury. Due to the current incapacitation of our head captain Han, I was to take the mantle of the head of the Rune Knights until he is fully recovered. Han was struck down? Makarov asked with a hint of shock in his voice. I am not able to disclose such information, Wizard Saint Makarov. Lahar replied. However, I was not ordered here with my squadron to discuss the status of the head captain. Then why are you here? Natsu asked, folding his arms across his chest. Natsu? Lucy exclaimed at her friend for the sudden act of questioning the second in command of the Rune Knights. Lahar surveyed the throng before him. Doing a head count of each and every fairy tale member toted all the names from the files he was provided to remember with respect to the rebellious guild. He then frowned when he noted the lacking of one specific member. I noticed that Urza Scarlet, the Titania, is not present, the Rune Knight commander stated. Gray nodded.
Yeah, she got hurt when the war took place. Plus she went through some sort of trauma because as soon as she woke up, Gray and everyone else looked down at the ground. Urza's screams were something that made everyone shudder, even if it was just the mere thought of it. Where is she now? Lahar asked. She is currently at the Magnolia Medical Center. My friend Perliuzica is too busy with other things to take care of her, so I took her there. Makarov replied. The wizard saint's eyes then narrowed dangerously, a small amount of magical pressure escaping his body. Why are you so focused on Urza? What do you want with her?
Lahar stood up a bit straighter as he gulped in nervousness. Despite his diminutive size, the man was easily able to place fear in one's heart. From your report, it was stated that Urza Scarlet of Fairy Tale fought against the Element 4 member, Arya of Phantom Lord. We wish to bring her in for questioning regarding his whereabouts. You have all said that it is assumed that Juvia Loxer, Gajeel Red Fox, Totomaru and Monsieur Saul were all abducted by the Ogono Fujin and Onibi Mayobu when the war neared its climax and Jose Porla was allegedly killed by the Ogono Fujin. Therefore, since Arya was not present during that situation, I must assume that only Urza Scarlet would be aware of the air magic user's location. Stop beating around the bush, Lahar. Natsu said with a growl. His pupils became vertical slits as his annoyance grew. What are you saying? By the order of the Magic Council, I, Lahar, second in command and head captain of the Rune Knights while head captain Han is incapacitated, am to place Urza Scarlet, the Titania of Fairy Tale, under arrest and place her in the custody of the Magic Council for questioning regarding the matters which involved the Guild of Fairy Tale in its previous act of participating in the guild war against Phantom Lord. The glasses-wearing man and all of the Rune Knights behind him shuddered, their eyes widening as they saw the angry glares from every single Fairy Tale mage aimed at them. Touch Urza, and I will not hesitate to sever the hand that had the audacity to do so within the presence of the son of Igniel. Natsu threatened, orange flames outlining his body in a menacing fashion. Kana drew her cards. Elfman flexed his muscles. Lucy drew the key for Taurus from her keyring. Gray summoned forth ice blades. Every single Fairy Tale member present prepared for a fight, furthering the seriousness of Natsu's threat. The Rune Knights glared back at the Fairy Tale mages and their magic energies spiked as well. However, before a conflict could ensue, a voice echoed through the air. Stop, all of you. The Fairy Tale members and Rune Knights all looked in shock as they saw that it was actually Makarov who made the order. But master, they want to take Urza. She's not fit to even be able to be removed from the hospital, Kana exclaimed. Real men defend their comrades. Elfman roared. It's understandable you would want to protect Urza, but there are laws for a reason. My children, you all have been through enough as it is, but this is something that cannot be overlooked. Makarov turned to Lahar. I apologize for my children's behavior and I will allow you to take Urza with you to the Magic Council's HQ for trial. However, I ask that you allow me to accompany her as her supporter. She's not mentally stable and still weak physically. Makarov-san, please, Lahar. Everyone stared with wide eyes as Makarov looked very tired all of a sudden, and it was only then they probably ever truly recognized just how old the Titan of Fairy Tail looked. I've already lost 2 children, both of my own fault. I cannot bear to lose another, even if it is through court ruling. I cannot lose Urza, not after what the Ogo no Fujin told me. Lahar looked at the broken-looking man and nodded quickly. I do not understand, Makarov-san. However, I will grant your request. As acting head captain, I, Lahar, will allow you to enter the courtroom to act as a legal guide for Urza Scarlet. Makarov nodded in thanks. Would you please escort me to the hospital where Urza Scarlet is recuperating then? Follow me. Makarov stated and began to walk towards the acting Rune Knight head captain. However, he paused when Lucy called out to him. Master. The old man glanced back over his shoulder at the busty blonde celestial spirit user. Yes, my child. What did you mean when you said, I've already lost 2 children? I don't recall you ever talking about having anyone other than your grandson, Laxus. Lucy looked at her master with a worried, yet innocent expression. Makarov sighed and the Titan of Fairy Tail watched the young blonde with a sad smile. I'm curious as well. Gray stated. We know of your son. Everyone winced at the sore subject regarding the elder Dreyar's son, but Gray spoke once more. But who is the second? I failed to raise the first properly and it resulted in my decision to banish him from the guild. Iwan was always shady and because of my negligence, I lost him to the darkness in his heart. The second was of my own fault. Like all of you, he was my child in all but blood. I sent him off to his death per my own orders and the need for revenge for what happened to 5 of my children. I thought he was strong enough and because of my senility and foolishness, I was blind to the fact that I was basically asking him to take on a suicide mission. A lone tear escaped Makarov's right eye and left a dark wet line down his cheek. Who was it? Natsu asked. I will finish the message when I complete the task regarding Urza. I promise I will tell you, but until I get Urza out of Magic Council hands I can't tell you. It would be too much for your young minds to handle if I were to tell you. Master. The guild members bellowed with an arguing tone of voice. Makarov remained silent and he took a deep breath before shakily exhaling the air from his lungs. All of Fairy Tail burst into an uproar as Makarov left with the Rune Knights. But their master paid them no heed and the Rune Knights and Makarov vanished into the crowd of people that traversed the streets of Magnolia Town. Lucy turned and looked up at Natsu's taller form, the young Dragonslayer's face in a serious expression as he stroked Happy's head. Natsu. I don't know why, but I'm scared of what Master is going to tell us, Lucy admitted. Happy agreed with a soft tone. Natsu watched the frowning winged feline before looking down at Lucy with a frown of his own. The Heartfilia heir had her legs slightly shaking from the suspense and ominous cliffhanger end to the speech he just gave. Natsu then stretched out his arm and gently pulled Lucy to lean on him and the blonde instinctively latched onto the rosette's orange and black vest. I'm sure Ji-chan has a very good reason behind his actions, Lucy. Natsu said. It'll be fine, I promise. Lucy gulped audibly and slowly nodded as she glanced up at the grinning son of Igneal. However, deep down Natsu could only feel doubt within himself towards his own words. Makarov was never one to let anything get him down, but after seeing the man he saw as a grandfather the way he was earlier made Natsu wonder. What happened, Ji-chan? Mage Recovery Wing Magnolia Hospital, Magnolia Town, Fury. Urza looked out of the window, her brown eyes staring into the blue abyss of the sky. She observed the clouds drifting lazily by before zeroing in on a pair of birds that flew around each other in a makeshift aerial dance before splitting apart and then converging at a single point near where the land met the sky. The Titania of Fairy Tail continued to focus on the pair of birds, even as they began into the sunlight. The golden light shone brightly in her iron rays. Urza didn't even squint as the image of the golden light became golden flames. Golden flames burned within her mind's eyes before shifting to a platinum color. Her pupils dilated as the images came back to her. Blood soared through the air. The screams of pain filled her ears. The image of the blade piercing her would-be molester appeared, his eyes wide with shock. The flames of Caliburn burned wildly before a flash filled her vision. Urza suddenly began to breathe heavily, not even noticing the nurse that entered her room. Nay, Urza-san. You're awake, that's good. Can I get you anything? Urza-san. The young pink-clad woman stared at the red-haired patient as Urza's eyes began to rapidly shift within their sockets, glancing left and then right. Urza-san. The nurse yelled. The Requip magic user did not respond for a second time and then everything began to go downhill from there. Rapid beeping filled the air as Urza began to hyperventilate and her eyes suddenly stopped moving from side to side and instead shifted upwards. The young woman's eyes suddenly went from brown to white as the chocolate-colored orbs rolled up into her skull. Her body convulsed wildly and the nurse immediately pressed the emergency button. Within a matter of seconds, 3 nurses and a doctor entered the room. "What happened?" the doctor exclaimed as he ducked beneath the soaring lamp that Urza had struck in her convulsing state of body. "I don't know," the nurse replied. She had just woken up and then she started to breathe heavily before going into shock. The beeping increased in volume and frequency and the doctor looked at the screen. "Her blood pressure's spiking. Get me some coral hydrate to knock her out." The nurses immediately brought over the syringes and filled it with a small dose of coral hydrate which was mixed in with an organic solvent to easily allow the body to intake the drug from her blood vessels. The doctor then held up her arms and a few small magic seals burst forth from the bed railing. Black leather straps appeared out of the magic seals and latched onto Urza's limbs and neck, effectively binding her. The nurses decided to help hold down the super strength-bearing woman as well as they could, gripping the woman's wrists and ankles as tightly as they could. The doctor then raced over to Urza, knowing full well about the Titania's ability of enhanced strength as she saw her magic bindings beginning to stretch out before stabbing the coral hydrate into her carotid artery which was located on the neck. She pushed down on the syringe and pumped the drug solution into the young mage's bloodstream. The drug was very effective as in a matter of seconds, Urza's seizure was non-existent and her body lay still, her chest falling and rising with her breathing rate. The monitor beside her bed had been tipped over, but the doctor picked it back up and observed the values and sighed in relief as she witnessed the girl's heart rate drop back from the near 180 values to 120. "Good, that should stabilize her," the doctor said as she snapped her fingers and Urza's binding vanished in a flash of magic energy. She then walked up to the unconscious sword wielder and a light green aura of magic energy ran over her hands before she rested them on Urza's forehead. "What is the diagnosis, doctor?" one of the nurses asked. "She's physically stable, but her mental state ruptured. Judging from what happened with the guild war against Phantom Lord, I would assume it's some form of PTSD, that is, post-traumatic stress disorder," she replied. The nurse nodded his head before he and the other 3 left per their superior's instructions. The doctor then began to run a series of tests on her patient. She ran basic blood tests, urine tests, brainwave activity measurements and magic system checks to name a few. Everything physical is fine. Although those cauterized scars on her shoulder and stomach do worry me, but they were probably from an earlier time and never properly healed. Urine has no form of excess amino acids or glucose so excretory processes are normal. Magic system is exemplary as always, but the doctor sighed as she ran her fingers through her dark brown hair, her brainwave activity. Her alpha waves that signify the action of REM sleep show that her dreams are not exactly good ones. Those spikes are much too large to be anything but nightmares. I'll have to run a psyche evaluation on her when she wakes up. Her equally brown eyes shut as she rubbed her temples. "I swear, you fairy tale mages are just as much trouble unconscious as you are conscious," she muttered. The doctor then opened her eyes as she heard the doors slide open and she turned, her eyebrows arching in mild surprise. "Oh, Makarov-san, what brings you here other than to visit your unconscious guildmate?" "Nothing, my dear Rin-chan," he said with a laugh. He held his gaze upon the accomplished doctor, remembering during his younger days when the young woman was just a medical student learning hospital experience in the town. Her dark brown hair extended to just below the base of her neck, but was currently tied up in a short ponytail. Her deep, chocolate brown eyes held much wisdom within them, the purple fang-like tattoos present on either cheek. She was currently dressed in a dark purple and black shirt and skirt that ended just above her knees and wore a pair of black high heels. Her doctor's coat, a bright white that made a stark contrast with her dark outfit, was worn over her current attire and a stethoscope hung itself around her neck. Rin rolled her eyes when she caught a glimpse of the mischievous shine in the elderly guild master's eyes. His arm then extended as if it were rubber and he began to attempt to pat the attractive medical mage on her shapely behind. However, before he could even make contact, the doctor's hands shot forth and squeezed tightly around the titan of Fairy Tale's wrist. Her fingertips then embedded themselves into the pressure points beneath the diminutive man's extended forearm and it fell to the ground as a lengthy mess, as if it were a spaghetti noodle long forgotten. "You know," Makarov spoke, "I like that arm." "Oh, shut up will you? I told you many times to not attempt to touch me on my ass or else that would happen, but you never listened to me." "So mean, Rin-chan." The Titan magic user sulked as he sat in a corner, the anime black cloud of shame hanging over his head. "So, mind telling me why those rune knights are outside the hospital doors?" Rin asked. The gray-haired man raised an eyebrow at her as he rose up from his corner and walked up to her. "How? You think I can be a medical mage and not sense other magical presences? Plus the marching could be heard from quite a distance." Makarov chuckled at Rin's response. "Well, you have a point there." The grandfather of Laxus then shifted his gaze to Urza. The dark-eyed man's jovial expression became one associated with melancholy before he walked up to the unconscious 19-year-old. He then went to raise his arm up when he realized something. Rin-chan? Rin turned away from the medical charts in her hand and at the mustached guild master. She saw him glance down at the ground, his limp noodle of an arm still laying there from when Rin struck his nerves in his forearm. Huh? Oh, right. Sorry about that. She knelt down and stabbed her index and middle fingers into the necessary pressure points and the arm snapped back into place as if it were a rubber band strand. Makarov rested his hand atop the unconscious girl's own and patted it gently before smiling at his young charge. I remember when she had just joined the guild. She was so small and fragile, not wanting to socialize with anyone. Back then, I truthfully thought that Urza wouldn't be able to grow up to be as strong as she is today, but she certainly proved me wrong and I was glad for it. I just hope that I see that strength return to her when she wakes up, Makarov said. She had actually woken up earlier. Rin stated. Makarov's eyes wide and exclaimed, earning a nod from the purple tattoo-marked girl. Yeah, it was about, I think an hour ago. One of the nurses said she had woken, but just as soon as she immediately went into a seizure. I assume it's probably from PTSD, but I can't say for sure. Rin said. She is a tough one though, I'll give her that. Silence then reigned supreme for a few moments as Makarov sat beside Urza's bed, still holding her unconscious form's hand. Rin sat on standby, fiddling with the pen in her hands as she continued to observe her patient's test results. However, the silence was broken by the sound of a low moan. Urza twitched beneath the bedsheets before her eye muscles tightened and then relaxed as they slowly opened. She squinted slightly due to the afternoon sun's light still shining through the glass. Her brown eyes snapped open as she swiftly raised herself into a sitting position with a gasp. She looked around with surprise written all over her face before she settled her gaze upon her diminutive master. Master? What are you doing here? She glanced around. Where am I? Makarov stared with wide eyes at the woman he saw his family in all but blood before smiling, tears threatening to escape them. You're in the hospital, Urza-chan. You were badly injured in your fight with Arya and you also suffered a mild coma, so you've been unconscious for quite a while. A coma? She gulped audibly. How long? Nothing too serious. You've only been out for a little more than a week. Rin said. Urza raised an eyebrow at the brown-haired woman. And you are? I'm Dr. Rin MD, PhD, BSc. Double D. Makarov giggled perversely, earning him a glare from the scarlet-haired Titania and a stethoscope impacting with his noggin as a result of Rin throwing it at him. A large red bump appearing on his skull. Totally worth it. The two large-breasted women rolled their eyes at the perverted old man before Urza turned to the older woman with a small smile of gratitude and bowed her head slightly. Thank you for taking care of me for this time. I am aware of my enhanced strength, so I apologize for any sort of inconvenience I may have brought upon you, Doctor. Rin blushed lightly at Urza's formal response, waving her hand. Ma, don't worry about it, Urza-san. It's my job to take care of people in need, and since you're such a sweet little girl, there's no need to be so formal, just call me Rin. Rin smiled at the fairy tale woman. Urza blinked in confusion, tilting her head to the side. Little girl? But you look just about as old as I do. Rin winked slyly at Urza. Being Poor-Lyuzica-sensei's only student does have its perks, not to mention learning the formula to generate a drug to slow the external aging process. Poor-Lyuzica-sensei was already in her 70s by the time she and I developed the formula, so it would make no sense for her to take it. Poor-Lyuzica's. Urza snapped her head in Makarov's direction. Master, when did Poor-Lyuzica-san take on a student? I thought she hated people. Rin-chan was the only one who was interesting to her and had decided that since Rin was one of the few medical mages existing who wished to further her medical education into the realms beyond that of regular magical sciences, she agreed to the one-time offer of taking Rin-chan on as a student. Though this was back during the time Master Purhito, the second master of fairy tale, the one before me, was still in charge and Poor-Lyuzica was still in her prime. Just how old are you? It's rude to ask a woman her age, Urza-san. Rin pouted, her arms crossing beneath her chest and making her breasts seem that much larger. Makarov's right eye twitched lightly before a small line of blood trickled from his nose, but he quickly wiped it away lest he wanted another stethoscope to the head. Well, I have some things to take care of with another patient, so I'll see you two later. If you have any problems, ask for me, okay? Urza nodded at Rin before the well-educated female left the room. Urza then stretched her tense muscles as she slipped out from under the covers of her bed and headed for the bathroom, where she had a quick shower before activating her re-equip magic to dress herself in her usual outfit of a white blouse, blue skirt, dark brown boots and her heart cruise armor. The brown-eyed sword wielder then turned to her master. Master, you seem a bit troubled, Urza said as she noticed the glimpse of tiredness in her superior's eyes. Is something the matter? You'll see when we go outside, Urza-chan. Urza blinked in confusion before being led out of her room. Their footsteps were the only sounds between them as they traversed the hallways of the hospital and then climbing down the 2 flights of stairs due to Urza being on the 3rd floor. As they reached the ground floor, they headed for the doors which slid open automatically upon the sensors detecting their approaching forms. However, Urza's eyes widened in shock as she stepped outside to suddenly find the squadron of Rune Knights led by Lahar waiting for her. "Master, what is the meaning of this?" Urza asked. "Why are the Rune Knights here?" "The Magic Council requires specific questioning from you, it seems, Urza-chan." Makarov replied. "Though in my honest opinion, Lahar-kun is hiding something else from me, isn't that right?" Boy. He spat out the word with venom in his tone. Lahar didn't respond, but simply motioned for a Rune Knight to move forth. The troop nodded and walked forward with cuffs held out to bind the Titania of Fairy Tail. But Urza immediately lashed out and grabbed the man by his wrists and pushed off of the ground and wrapping her legs tightly around the man's neck before leaning backwards, her hands being planted firmly on the ground and using her powerful abdominal and leg muscles to bring the Rune Knight over her head and slam him face first into the ground with enough force to break his nose. 5 Rune Knights charged to restrain the powerful mage, but Makarov's enlarged hand held them back, separating them from Urza and vice versa. "I never gave the order for you all to restrain Urza Scarlet." Lahar glared at his men who gulped at their superior's gaze. "Upon return to HQ, you 5 will be assigned to cleaning duty of the Rune Knight Barracks 1 through 10 for acting without receiving orders from your commanding officer in the middle of a task. Understood?" "Yes, head captain." The Rune Knights bowed their heads in shame. Lahar nodded as the men returned to their group and Makarov removed his hand from in front of Urza. "I would rather not be bound during this," Urza said. "Not that it would matter since I can easily break through your cuffs, magically enhanced or not." She does have a point there. Lahar and the Rune Knight's sweat dropped. Lahar nodded in agreement as he gestured for his men to stand down. "Very well, Urza Scarlet. You will not be cuffed," Lahar stated. Urza nodded and she looked down at Makarov. "Are you coming as well, master?" she asked the wizard saint. The 3rd master of Fairy Tail nodded. "I will. I will be there to act as your makeshift lawyer and also I wish to see what it is that the Magic Council is holding you for because as I stated earlier, Lahar-kun is hiding something." Makarov glared at the glasses-wearing Rune Knight, but said Rune Knight didn't respond like he did before when accused of hiding something earlier. He then looked to 4 of his Rune Knights who nodded and the rest of squadron surrounded Lahar, Urza and Makarov in the center of the group. The 4 Rune Knights then clapped their hands together and a large violet magic seal sprung up beneath every single one of them. A flash of violet light followed after and the group vanished from the view of all the citizens that had happened to be watching as they were teleported to the Magic Council HQ. Insert music. Fairy Tail Tower of Heaven, Magic Council Archive Room, Magic Council HQ Fury Branch, Fury. Ever since that incident in Clovertown where Naruto had that mental breakdown that resulted in him turning intast with extraordinary bloodlust and killing intent. The event had resulted in him realizing that his childhood friend was not who he seemed to be until it occurred to him that he never really knew much about Naruto to begin with in the first place. Who were his parents? When did he gain his ability to use magic? Where did he live? What was his last name? Shikamaru came to realize that Naruto's answers to questions that involved his past were very vague. When asked where he lived, he merely said he lived in the mountains with his adoptive father. When asked who his parents were, he said he never knew them. When asked about what his last name was, he replied by saying that if he didn't know his parents, how would he know his biological last name or names? Though these were understandable answers, Shikamaru always thought Naruto was trying to avoid truly answering them and would have spoken about them when he wanted to. After all, they were friends, nakama. Naruto wouldn't keep secrets from his nakama, would he? Shikamaru had decided to take advantage of the fact that he was the successor to being the head of the Rune Knights Tactics Division, and so he was granted a large degree of access to the archives that held the information on any and every single member of the population of Fury that had been registered in the database, and also had information regarding any historical information regarding Earthland's countries and any major events that would have occurred in any given timeline. Of course, any and all classified files wouldn't be able to be handed to him until he became the actual head of the Tactics Division after Shikaku's, his father's, retirement, which would occur soon since Shikaku was nearing 60 years of age. Anyway, Shikamaru had then used this access to the archives to research any and all information regarding Naruto, however. Damn it, nothing again. Shikamaru banged his fists on the keyboard. He glared at the glowing blue screen where a large red, unknown, was emblazoned across the surface as if taunting him. Why can't I find him? I can't find anything on him, Kuso. He snapped up from his hunched-over position when he felt a hand touch his shoulder. Shikamaru shot up into an upright position and turned around swiftly, his eyes wide, but he merely sighed when he saw it was only his best friends. Hoji, Ino. The young Akamichi and Yamanka nodded to their friend, but frowned when he noticed the tired look on Shikamaru's face. Shikamaru, you've been at this for more than a week. Give it a rest already and you'll come back to it, the rotund young man said. Shikamaru smiled at their concern, but then became serious. "No," he said. "I won't give up on finding out what I can about Naruto. He's one of my best friends, my nakama, and it is exactly that is driving me to do this. For nearly 20 years, I've known him and yet we've only now come to realize we don't even know anything about him. Hell, we can't even say we know anything about Kurama." "But Shika, Naruto and Kurama have always been enigmas," Ino said. "We accepted that a long time ago, and though that little psychotic episode he had in Clover Town was unexpected, that's nothing to go to such research-related lengths. Listen, why don't you get off of the computer and we can go get some barbecue from Shuza-san's restaurant and then you are going to sleep." "Sleep?" Shikamaru scoffed. "Ain't nobody got time for that." Ino and Choji raised a confused eyebrow at Shikamaru's odd response before glaring at him as he turned back to the computer, typing away to find any sort of clue that would relate to Naruto. They looked and saw numerous profile windows with images of men with blonde hair and or blue eyes that were of a similar shade to Naruto's, and then there were medical files throughout all of Fiore's medical centers and hospitals that were pregnant during the year X763, the year Naruto was born. Then there were geographical maps with respect to mountainous areas on the eastern section of Fiore, more specifically, the area near Clover Town. Insert music. 2 steps from Hell Clairvoyant. "Come on Shika, stop," Ino said as she grabbed the back of his chair. She twirled the chair around so that Shimamaru was facing them, but the pineapple hair-shaped man immediately went to turn back around. However, Choji's arm enlarged to a slightly larger size as he spun the chair around and gripped Shikamaru tightly with it. "Mind manipulation magic. Body control," Ino said as she tapped Shikamaru on the head. Shikamaru's body froze and suddenly his hand raised as Ino did the same, copying her actions to the exact muscle movement. "Right, now that I've got you, it's time to get you out of here," Ino said. "No, let me go," Shikamaru yelled. "Shika, this is for your own good," Ino yelled back at him. "No, not until I find out about Naruto," Shikamaru roared. "Why are you so hooked up on this Shikamaru?" Choji exclaimed, his hands spread wide in disbelief. "You've never shown such drive before. Yes, it's Naruto, it's one of our best friends and one of our nakama. But not even you would have shown such drive to figure out about him before." "You want to know why?" Shikamaru yelled back. "It's because I can't live with the fact that I haven't been that good of a friend to him." Ino and Choji stepped back in surprise, Shikamaru copying the action due to Ino's spell. What are you talking about?" the platinum blonde mage asked. Shikamaru sighed. "Whenever Naruto came over by me, all we did was play shogi and eat ramen. I rarely talked to him, I rarely socialized as much as I would when compared to when I talked to you guys." He sighed. "Remember that time when we were 10? Sakura had to go home, so it was just us 3 and Naruto. We were looking up at the night sky and we saw that shooting star that appeared to fall down into the mountains outside Clover Town. The 3 of us made a wish to make it possible to try and catch a shooting star." Ino and Choji chuckled at that. "Yeah, it was so childish. To catch a star." Choji snorted. "Impossible." "Yeah, but even so." Shikamaru spoke once more. "When we made that wish, Naruto got up and walked off, and it wasn't until 2 days later at noon that we saw him again. He was covered in dirt and grass and some bits of dried blood from cuts that seemed to not exist on his body, so I was actually unsure as to whether or not it was his own. He came back to us and he seemed tired, but he didn't bother with it, the stubborn ass." Shikamaru chuckled. He then held out his hands and showed us a small mound of gold dust and silver stone that seemed so amazing and not of this world due to its shine. When we asked what it was, he said was stardust. Ino whispered. We asked him why he went to search all those days and he said that it was his wish that made him do what he did. He said he wished that he could do whatever it took to make the dreams of his nakama come true, that his pride would not allow him to waver from his vows, and so he spent 2 days looking for what he thought was stardust. It was actually just some shiny pieces of rock and gold dust that could be found in any mountain bedrock. Choji said with a small smile. Exactly, and the thing was that he knew that it wasn't stardust. He just said it because he knew it would have made our 10-year-old selves happy. He went to a lot of lengths to make sure we were happy, almost as if he were thinking that if he didn't, we would be mad at him. But Shika, what does this have to do with Naruto? Ino asked. The point is that Naruto did a lot for me, for us. I couldn't call myself his friend if I weren't willing to do the same. The 3 of them glanced down at the ground as silence fell upon them, and Ino sighed as she released Shikamaru from her spell. You know, now that I think about it, we never really had given Naruto the parties we missed over the 7 years he had been gone because of Sakura's birthday preparations. He never got to celebrate 7 years of his birthday. Ino sighed. Choji nodded. Shikamaru's head snapped up in alarm, as if he had had an epiphany. Insert music. Steins. Gate of Steiner. Ino. He ran up to her and gripped her shoulders tightly. Say that again. What? She exclaimed. The sky blue-eyed Rune Knight stared at her friend in shock as she saw his eyes seem to shake as they gazed into her own. What was it that you just said? That. that Naruto never got a chance to celebrate 7 years of his birthday since he was gone from Clover. When is his birthday again? October 10th. He answered his own question. Suddenly, Shikamaru's IQ of over 200 began to work its wonders and he ran back over to the computer and typed frantically on the keyboard. He cut out every single window he had created and started on a new page and began to pull up the current timeline's major facts that occurred within the X700s. Numerous windows then began to pop up all over the place as he clicked on a number of them. Shikamaru, what are you? He's born on October 10th. He's our age, so that means Naruto was born in the X763. Major events that occurred during that year were the civil war with an era when there were a few rebels who wanted to overthrow the Magic Council, the uncovering of a rare artifact of the lost age of Camelot, the finding out about the Dark Guilds becoming truly active, and finally, the war with the Lizardmen in Konohagakure. Choji and Ino read. What is Konohagakure? I've never heard of it. Konohagakure was supposed to be a secret village, it seems. It was a relatively large village that had a small mage population of only 20 or 30. However, Minato, Namikaze, and Kushina Uzumaki are listed in the archives as being former members of the village of Konohagakure, but it was burned to the ground in the war with the Lizardmen during that time. Shikamaru said as he pulled up 2 windows on Minato and Kushina. The 2 strongest humans in existence, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, were known to have been married and they took some time off from the council's work to get their lives together in Konoha. But then the Lizardmen attacked. The war was easily turned in the Lizardmen's favor seeing as how they outnumbered the village. Ino read her piece. But Minato and Kushina would have easily been able to defeat those reptilian beasts. I mean, they are members of the 10 Wizard Saints and were even recognized by Makarov Dreyard to be even stronger than he was, and Makarov is a true master of Titan magic. To-san, and I only know the basics of it, but Makarov is a beast. Choji tilted his head in confusion, running his hand through his spiky brown hair. Yes, but remember, it is a confirmed fact that Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki vanished from the face of the earth and were proclaimed dead by the Magic Council 20 years ago in X763. The exact same year we were born. Naruto was born in that same year and he lives in the eastern mountain range, the same location where it is said Konoha was said to have stood. So you're saying Naruto is connected to Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki? Choji asked. That's exactly what I'm saying. This was originally a plan to figure out what made Naruto into that killing intent leaking monster he became at Sakura's birthday, but in order to understand what happened to him, we have to know who Naruto is first. With this information we have gathered, it is logical to say Naruto was a member of this Konohagakure. However, when it is taken into account that Konoha burned down, Minato and Kushina happened to have gone missing or died. Naruto was born in X763, Konoha was burned down in X763. Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze are proclaimed missing and later dead. Our blonde friend said he didn't know much or anything regarding his biological parents. Shikamaru pressed a few keys of the keyboard and then took out his wallet and removed a photo of Naruto from Sakura's birthday party with all of them together. He scanned the photo and then zoomed in on Naruto's face and placed Minato and Kushina's images next to Naruto's own. Shikamaru then paused and glanced around the archive room as if looking for something before his eyes narrowed and he turned back to the screen. He then dropped his voice down to a whisper's level. Naruto has the exact same hairstyle and eye color as Minato and the same facial structure of Kushina, and given the connection that Minato, Kushina and Naruto all have to Konoha regarding the timeline of events and Naruto's physical resemblance to the two, there is only one thing I can say about Naruto, and it can only be a cold hard fact, nothing else. Ino and Choji stared in shock at their friend, glancing between the screen and him at a rapid pace. I am impossible. There's no way this could be. Shikamaru closed his eyes. He snapped them back open, is the son of 2 wizard saints. Minato Namikaze the Kiroi Senko, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze the Akai Chishio no Habanero, and their son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. The world came crashing down upon them and the 3 friends of Naruto looked at the image on the screen. Ino and Choji stared with awe and Shikamaru smirked. You really are one troublesome bastard. Nay, Naruto? Shikamaru then rose up from the chair and downloaded every single history reference and image he had pulled up regarding Naruto's true identity and placed it into a small flash drive. After all, what was the point of looking for something if you weren't gonna store it into a portable storage device at the end of it all? Shika, why'd you do that? Ino exclaimed as Shikamaru deleted his research history. We can't let the council know that our friend is such a powerful man. If they figured out Minato and Kushina had a son, they would not be able to keep their claws off of him. The 2 of you know as well as I do that the Magic Council is extremely shady and they're just as power hungry. If they had a hold on the kind of power Naruto had, there would be a shift in the strength of the Monarchy of Fury to that of the Magic Council's Fury branch, our HQ branch, and would result in utter disarray, since there are some council members I know who would like nothing more than to hold mages supreme over Fury rather than have the monarchy rule it. Shikamaru stated quietly as he began to glance around the archive room once more. Damn it, I know I felt something. Why can't I find that magic source? He thought with gritted teeth. Politics sucks. Choji muttered. Shikamaru and Ino nodded in agreement. So we keep this between us. Besides, we had already decided when we wanted to try and help Naruto that this was a private investigation into our friend. We do not make contact with anyone outside of the three of us with regards to this information. Not even Sakura or Yame can know of this. There's too much at stake. Understood. Choji and Ino said. The two then began to walk off with Shikamaru, but the tactics division heir held back a bit as he glanced down at the flash drive in his hand. The image of Naruto in black clothing and wearing a black face mask appearing in his mind's eye, and the wind swirling wildly around him as if bending to his command. There is definitely too much at stake, Shikamaru thought. The three Rune Knights then headed through the halls towards the mess hall in the main building where Shikamaru finally ate a large enough meal to satisfy his body's need for nourishment and then headed to his quarters for some much-needed rest. Choji stayed behind to finish off the barbecue's beef he was eating, and so Ino was left by her lonesome to wander the Magic Council HQ. She passed by the large lawns where she saw many of the infantry members were practicing their weapons training and/or magic usage. A few of male members spotted her and made some wolf whistles at her, to which she replied with a sly wink before walking away with a sway in her hips just to tease them. It hurt to watch her go, but damn did they love to watch her leave. After arriving at the main corridor where numerous Rune Knights were passing in and out of, the Frone staff members mingled with the human members as they went through to the rooms or to the outside world where their respective duties lay. However, she raised a curious eyebrow when she turned to see a purple, black-spotted salamander-looking staff member run up to her. Ino Yamanaka of the Interrogators Corp? The salamander asked as he adjusted his glasses. Ino nodded. Speaking, she replied. What is it you want, Yamanaka-san? Your presence is required in the courtroom. Why? The council wishes for you to aid in the retrieving of information should it become difficult to extract it from the defendant should she be deemed unwilling to comply. The staff member replied. Ino sighed as she placed her hands on her hips, bending her head low so she was slightly facing the ground. Her eyes glanced at the salamander. So they want me now, or is this thing later? Now, Yamanaka-san. The salamander replied. Ino sighed again before nodding. Very well. Ino muttered before heading off towards the courtroom, her Rune Knight cloak billowing behind her as she walked briskly to the courtroom doors. Once she found her way to the large wooden doors on the side of the courtroom building where only executives could enter from, she pushed them open to see the council members all sitting at their podiums. Ah, Yamanaka-san, such a pleasure to see you. Ino said. Ino nodded to the council members respectfully before pivoting her head to look at Org. Org-sama, you wished me to aid information extraction from a defendant during this trial. May I ask who the defendant is? Ino asked. Org nodded before pointing to the doors at the far end of the room where, guilty, people entered from. After a minute of waiting, the doors creaked open and two figures entered through the doors. The two figures walked up to the desk where the defendants and their lawyers usually stand. Ino looked at the taller of the twos and said figure was more noticeable and raised an eyebrow in interest. Urza Scarlet, Titania of Fairy Tail. You're the defendant? Apparently so, Urza replied. I apologize for my tone, but, who are you? Ino Yamanaka, member of the Interrogation Corp and heir to it as my Two-chan is the current head of the department. Ino replied. So what are the charges being held against you? I don't know. Your acting head captain, Lahar, merely said I was being called in for questioning involving the war with Phantom Lord. Master Makarov insisted that Lahar was hiding a piece of information from us, so, if the Honorable Council would be so kind as to tell me why the hell I'm here, we can begin this unnecessary trial. You better watch your tongue, young lady. Belino said with her eyes narrowing. Urza aimed an icy glare at the female council member, shifting it to the blue-haired Seagrain when she turned her head to face him as he spoke. Now Belino Dono. Urza-san is just confused. So Urza-san, I shall enlighten you. Oh please do, Seagrain. The anticipation is killing me, Urza said with sarcasm dripping from her words. Ino chuckled at the redhead's sarcastic responses. I like her, she thought. Well, from the information gained from your guild mates, it was said that during the battle with Phantom Lord, each of your strongest team members had chosen to take on a member of the Element 4 and Kurigane Gajeel. You were said to have battled with Arya of the Air Element. Totomaru, Juvia Loxer, Gajeel Red Fox and Monsieur Saul are all missing, as it was confirmed by all guild members that their bodies were seen before being taken away by the Ogo no Fujin and Onibi Mayobu who, for unknown reasons, had been present at the war. However, Arya's body was noticeably not mentioned to being present. May we ask why? Urza froze as she stared at the tattooed young man. The images of her sword impaling through the man filled her head. Urza Scarlet, answer the question, Belino stated. Urza stared down at the ground. Her mouth felt dry and she raised her now shaking hands. Urza, are you alright? Makarov asked. The brown-eyed woman stared into her master's eyes as she turned to face him, the fear evident within those chocolate-colored orbs. Makarov had seen that look before in many mages during his younger years, and he could only remain silent as she watched the young woman turn back to the council. I. Urza's words stuck and formed a lump in her throat, the tears forming in her eyes as the images of the entire battle flooded her mind. Ino watched the younger woman with a frown. I'm sorry, Urza, but we need to know, Ino said as she walked up to the scarlet-haired mage. You will not touch her, Makarov said as his magic energy spiked. Ino gulped at the 10 Wizard Saint member. Makarov Drayar, this is a necessary process. Your mage has obviously regressed into some sort of mute state from some form of shock, and so Ino Yamanaka's mind-reading methods would be much needed in order to get the information on Arya's whereabouts. If you do not comply, Fairy Tail will be put in much danger, Yajima said. Yami? Makarov stared at his old friend in shock. I'm sorry, Maki, but it needs to be done, Yajima said. But she is my child, I cannot let her mind be probed over such a trivial matter. Maki, think about this. Arya is a dangerous man. He was claimed to be unstable mentally, and he was quite powerful as he was an S-class mage equivalent by Phantom Lord standards. If he is still alive, he will be registered as a dark mage since Phantom Lord is legally disbanded now, and he will be seen as a threat to society. We must gain this information now, Makarov. Makarov gulped audibly. If even Yajima was voting for this, then it was indeed very important. With a sigh he stepped back and let his magic power drop to its original levels. Ino nodded before walking up to Urza and placed her hands on Urza's forehead. Mind control magic. Mind reader. No, she massive spike in magic forced the large man off of her, and Urza began to resist the pressure of the air and regained her footing, albeit slowly. Her hair flowed wildly in the air as if it were a sea of fire. Her eyes showed fear as they expelled tears, while her snarl showed rage. Requip. Atlantean armor. Arya gained a surprised look as Urza was now coated in the golden armor that allowed her to gain the third blade of Merlin from the watery depths. Arya's surprise made him lose control of his spell, and Urza kicked Arya in the chest. The wind was knocked out of the air user and he found himself airborne. Urza leapt after him and crashed her trident down upon him. She then descended after him as he landed on the ground. Arya rolled along the ground and used the momentum to roll back onto his feet, clutching his burned sides, but he released a howl of pain as Urza threw her trident forth and the triple-pointed weapon stabbed itself into what remained of his left arm. No, she roared once more as she leapt at him with Caliburn. She brought the platinum blade down and severed his burned left arm. The limb and her trident fell to the ground. No, she twisted and performed an upward slash that took away his right arm. Blood and fire rained upon the ground. Urza then swung her blade downwards, and in one fell swoop, an arc flame marked the path of her platinum blade as she took away Arya's legs. The man released dreadful cries of pain, and before his limbless body could touch the ground, his body remained suspended. Gurk. Arya's eyes widened as he stared into Urza's eyes. Her brown eyes were full of fear, and the adrenaline made her body shake. Blood escaped in copious amount through his lips as his eyes glanced downwards to find the blade of Merlin impaled through his chest, slicing through his sternum as if it were paper, and exited out of his back. The crimson blood evaporated from the heat of the flames before spreading over Arya's body. But, Fairy Tail doesn't kill, were his last words before the platinum flames ignited his body, and Arya was nothing more than a blackened lump of charcoal. Urza removed her blade from the body RN. She fell to her knees and hugged her body tightly as if she were afraid it were about to disappear. Ino's eyes widened as the images vanished when she removed her hand from Urza's forehead. She stepped away from the young girl before turning to the council. Council. Arya of the former Guild of Phantom is dead. Urza Scarlet wielded a blade engulfed in fire and impaled him before burning the body to ash. She has committed the taboo among mages then, Michello yelled. The cat-like man slammed his cane on the ground as if were arguing a point. She must be punished. Michello is correct, Ultier and Seagrain stated. Org nodded as he stroked his long beard. Urza Scarlet has committed the taboo, and though it was a war, this action cannot be condoned. Actually, Org-sama, I would like to say that Urza Scarlet was not doing it out of the sheer moment of battle, Ino said. What do you mean, Ino? Li Ji asked as he adjusted his shades. I mean that her mind had always been in a rather upset state. The mind reader spell I use allows me to look into a person's mind and see what they see, and from I've seen. Urza has lived quite a difficult life. Even from a very young age she was not exactly living the good life. I cannot say because it is not my place to do so, but Urza Scarlet, after her current battle with Arya, most likely awakened some horrible past times, and so she reacted. Arya is the culprit by attempting an act of rape and molestation before he was killed. Urza Scarlet acted in self-defense, and so I believe she is not to be punished. Arya did what? Makarov roared, his magic spiking once more. The magic energy that came off of his body was immense, in which the energy made the ground crack. In an act of rage, Makarov slammed a rage-filled punch against the walls of the courtroom, blowing it apart and leaving a gargantuan hole in it. Makarov Dreyar, control yourself, Michello yelled. I'll show you control, Makarov yelled back, his magic spiking once more as he glared at Michello with glowing golden eyes. The cat-like council member gulped as he stepped back in fear of the Titan of Fairy Tail. However, before said Titan could move on, Urza fell to her knees on the tiled ground. Makarov immediately ran towards his surrogate child as Urza began to shake and sob. My child. He hugged the 19-year-old, stroking her hair. My child, I need to know. Is this true? Makarov asked. Did Arya really attempt to rape and molest you? Urza nodded. Did you mean to kill him? I. Answer the question, girl, Michello bellowed. Urza flinched under the stern, loud voice of the council member. I did. The aim was to kill him. He touched me. Urza crossed her arms over her armor-plated chested before glancing up at the council with tears lighting her eyes. He fucking tried to rape me. I didn't want to kill as I am against the very notion. But I am now aware that the world is not as black and white as Master Makarov has made it seem. Makarov stared in surprise at his mage's outburst. I didn't want to be raped. I acted in self-defense. Urza sniffled, the tear beginning to stream down her face as she failed to hold them back. He tried to rape me. So why am I being punished? Because, Urza Scarlet of Fairy Tail, you have committed the act of killing another mage. This is an act that breaches the laws of the Magic Council and cannot go unpunished, Bellino said. That's bullshit. Urza cried out. Young lady, you will watch your tone when addressing the Magic Council. Or what? You're gonna arrest me for voicing my opinion? This is a democracy. I have the right to the freedom of opinion, speech and association. You little whelp, I ought to. Stop, Ino roared, her magic energy spiking. She took temporary control of both Urza's and Bellino's bodies and forced their muscles in their mouths to tighten so that they remained shut. Her glare made everyone in the room silent, knowing very well that a pissed-off Ino was not a very nice Ino. Once all was silent, the platinum blonde woman undid her spell before facing her superior. Bellino-sama, honestly, you are being very unfair, Ino stated. How so? Every time we get a rape case from the other mage members of the population, we bring them in and it ends up boiling down to a case of who's right and who's wrong, and even if you do end up reading their minds to determine the culprit, you yourself had said that the mind's contents can be altered to suit the holder as one's thoughts are simply conjured up. But Bellino-sama. Look at her. She's 19, she's not even registered as an adult woman yet in my book, and I know the truth when I see it. Urza Scarlet is not lying and she did not conjure up any sort of falsified thoughts. Falsified thoughts do not leave the strong-hearted Titania of Fairy Tail in such a state, and you all know that just as well as I do. Ino argued. The mental trauma that occurred from these thoughts are no doubt real, and so I would ask that I be allowed to take Urza into my custody and aid in her mental recovery. But she committed the— Shut up, Michello, Yajima growled out. You are now just trying to find an excuse to punish Fairy Tail. Stop, it's embarrassing and unbecoming of a council member. Michello, Yajima, enough quarreling, Org roared. The entire courtroom became silent as the second seat of the Magic Council took a deep breath to calm the storm in his mind. Michello, Yajima is correct. Ino Yamanaka is one of our best mind control magic users in the interrogation corps alongside her father, and even then, Ino Ichi is saying she is getting better than him. I will not doubt the credibility and reliability of her words, and Ino does have experience in dealing with mental trauma patients due to dealing with our rune knights when they have psychological problems. Ino Yamanaka, you are free to allow to take Urza Scarlet into your custody, but she must be placed under your watch 24/7 until you deem her fit to return to mage duty with Fairy Tail. Anything that happens to her falls on your shoulders, understood? Yes, Org-sama. The gavel came down as the meeting was adjourned. Thank you so much, Makarov said, bowing lowly to the blonde. Ino nodded. I do what I can to help the innocent. Urza Scarlet is innocent, but she is going to take at least a few days to overcome this. It's already been a bit more than a week since the Phantom Lord War, so her mind has already begun to repress the memories. I will aim to help her make use of the memories as experiences of her to become a better person who knows the harsh realities of life. Or I could delete every single bad memory she has and she'll be left almost no childhood. Ino explained. You're welcome for my assistance, but I ask that should I require a favor, you will do it as long as it is in your power. Is that fair? You saved my child. Anything is fair, Ino-san. Makarov smiled warmly at her. Ino nodded and then picked up Urza, wrapped her arm around her shoulders. Come on, Urza-san. I'll make you some tea and then we can rest until you are ready to talk. Okay. Urza nodded, still sniffling from the traumatizing memories that had been forced to the surface. Urza rose to her feet and made her way to the mental rehabilitation center with Ino, but Makarov sighed as he stood in front of them. Actually, Ino-san, I would require Urza's presence with my guild. I have some news to share with the guild, Makarov informed her. Well, your guildmate's mental rehabilitation is surely much less important than what you wish to tell your guild, so sure. Let her go back with you. Ino glared as the sarcasm ripped itself from her vocal cords. Makarov glared back at Ino. Do not push me, child. I have granted you the act of taking my child into custody for you to aid in her mental rehabilitation, but this is something that I need my entire family to be present for. Ino remained unmoving and unblinking as she and Makarov glared at one another. However, Makarov had more than 80 years of experience dealing with women, and he wasn't about to let this one be the last. The two stared at one another, the anime lightning sparking between their eyes. Urza could only sweat drop a bit as she watched her master and the Rune Knight glare at one another. Finally, after a few moments of harsh staring, Ino's gaze wavered and she sighed as she dropped her head, closing her eyes in defeat. Very well. Take her, but be sure to bring her back, Ino said with a final glare. You have my word as Wizard Saint. Makarov then grabbed Urza and a large golden magic seal appeared beneath them. The two fairy tale mages vanished from view as they teleported in a flash of golden light. Fairy Tale Guildhouse, Magnolia Town, fury and odd setting indeed for fairy tale. There was no noise. No sounds of laughter. No sounds of screaming. No sound of bustling, rustling and fighting. The cry of "Kanpai" were no longer there. There was barely even the sound of breathing. If one were to glance at the guild from the outside and not hear any noise, they would think that this was some sort of ominous event, as the boisterous guild was never silent in the day. The entirety of Fairy Tale stood in front of the stage where Mirajane usually sang her songs, watching Makarov with wide eyes. The aged Wizard Saint stood with his stylized staff that had the top carved into the shape of the Fairy Tale symbol. He glanced at the ground with a look of sadness in his eyes. Master. I'm sorry, but I don't believe I heard you right. Natsu spoke with a twitching smile. You said he's gone. What do you mean by gone? My ace, my friend, my child. The man you all of you younger members saw as a father in all but blood. Makarov took a shaky breath before raising his head to face his makeshift family. Gildarts Clive is dead. Insert music. Angel Beats, Unjust Life. Urza, Gray, Happy, everyone, Kana especially, could only stare with wide eyes at their master. The world fell apart around them as the guild stared in shock. Silence reigned supreme as they continued to only stare at the aged man. Kana's eyes welled with tears before she began to bawl loudly. She fell to her knees and thrust her face into her hands. No one moved to comfort her as they were all still trying to process the news they were just told. How? That can't be possible. Natsu roared. The son of Igneel cracked the floor as he stamped his foot down in repressed rage. Gildarts is the strongest mage in the guild, and it would take no man less than a god to take him down. You're lying, Ji-chan. Tell me you're lying. The Wizard Saint couldn't look at Natsu. The crash magic user had been the closest thing Natsu had to a father ever since he was left by Igneel in X777. Natsu's mouth was slightly agape as he stared at the man he saw as a grandfather. Lucy watched her friend with a concerned look in her brown eyes before turning to her master. So when you said that you had lost 2 children, one being the son you excommunicated, then that means the second one was Gildarts? Lucy asked. Makarov nodded slowly. How did he? Gray gulped audibly. How did he die? Makarov looked down at the ground in shame, the staff in his hand creaking as he gripped it tightly. It was on my orders. After the attack on Natsu, Urza, Gray, Lucy and Happy in Oshibata town those many months ago before they left for their training trips, I was clouded in anger and the need to gain justice for my children. As a parent, I thought to do what I felt was right to earn retribution for my children, so I sent Gildarts after the Ogo no Fujin and Onibi Myobu to take them down, show them that Fairy Tale's family was not meant to be trifled with. But I made a mistake. The guild remained silent as Makarov sat down on the chair, his ability to stand being compromised as his legs began to feel like they were made of jello. I never really took into consideration that the Magic Council's title of SS class was an actual thing, and I thought that the Flee on Sight edition was just a title to scare anybody that would have thought to go up against the both of these 2 criminals. So Gildarts obeyed my orders. He found the Ogo no Fujin and they fought. And I lost my child as a result of my own senility. How did you find this out? Urza asked. After having woken up from my sleep at Porlyuzuka's, I immediately left the house. I didn't take notice of anything around me, only knowing that you all were in some form of danger since I knew Jose would not let you all have more than a single day to try and plan a counter-strike. You all were unconscious and the Fujin and Myobu were both there standing over your bodies. It was there that the Fujin told me. And you believed him? Mirajane asked. Mirachan. I sent Gildarts after the man. Gildarts would have contacted me if he had managed to survive, and I had received no word from the man in 3 months. It was 3 months ago that I had sent Gildarts off to fight the Fujin, and if the Fujin returned without any form of physical injury, how else am I supposed to not believe those words? But master, surely there is some evidence that the funeral will be held after Urza recovers from her mental rehabilitation time. No doubt this news puts much more of a burden upon my child's conscience though. Poor Lyuzuko was right. I'm definitely becoming senile. Maybe I should just hang up my cloak now and stop being the guild master. Makarov looked at his staff, staring at the carved image of fairy tale symbol. The guild suddenly burst into an uproar, voicing against the old man's notions. Master, Urza cried out, don't say something like that. What else am I supposed to do, Urza? Makarov yelled with tears in his eyes. I sent Gildarts to his death. I killed my child. I now have the blood of Gildarts on my hands and I can't do one shit to bring him back. I'm a horrible, senile guild master for believing that I could ever make this guild a paradise. Everything around me is crashing down. Urza, I'm getting old. Urza, I nearly lost you all. My guild was nearly destroyed because of the acts of a madman and I actually lost the life of my ace. The man I had once called a son. Tell me what else am I supposed to do, because if you have any sort of suggestion, I would gladly take it. The guild remained silent as they watched their broken guild master. I would understand if you all hated me. In fact, I would understand if you all think that you would want to leave this pathetic guild I've taken under my wing and gone off to another. Makarov sniffed loudly. But I can't imagine that. Insert music. Pokemon Black and White ends farewell extended version. Ji-chan. Natsu interrupted as walked up Makarov and hopped atop the stage. The son of Igneel picked up the dwarf of a man by the scruff of his cloak and a loud impact filled the air. Makarov's teared eyes were wide with shock along with everyone else's as they saw Natsu's fist embedded into the face of Makarov. The wizard saint stared into the eyes of the young Dragonslayer who remained stoic. Natsu, Mira-Jane and Urza cried out, but were held back as Gray and Lucy stepped in front of them. Gray, Lucy, what are you? He needs this, Happy said as he flew down and suspended himself between Lucy and Gray. Urza and Mira-Jane and the rest of the guild could only watch as Natsu continued to bore holes into his master's skull. You're right, Master Makarov. Everyone stared in shock, Makarov wincing as Natsu addressed him by his title and name. I do have the thought that maybe I would want to leave Fairy Tail. I do have the thought that I could, and I do hate you a bit for sending off Gildarts to take on the Fujin and Myobo. Then what's holding you back? Makarov asked. What's holding me back? Is that I know you are not one to believe for a moment that the words of a madman are true. You took the words of the Fujin and instantly you believed him. True, you did send Gildarts after him and the Fujin returned, but that does not mean that our ace is dead. Until I see a BVE that Gildarts is dead, and do not ever think for a second that you would be able to hang up the cloak that makes you the guild master and be able to walk out that door without first getting through me. Everyone, especially Makarov, stared at Natsu with wide eyes. You are a member of the 10 Wizard Saints. You are the 3rd Guild Master of Fairy Tail, father of Iwan, grandfather of Laxus, and you are most certainly one of the toughest old mages that the world has ever been blessed with and that society has been granted the ability to see. Now you will get your shit together and you will be our guild master. We are family, Ji-chan. We will not abandon you and we will not accept your words that Gildarts has fallen. As I said before, until I see a fucking body. I am not believing one shit you say. Natsu released a deep breath as through his entire speech he hadn't taken a single breath. After exhaling he spoke once more, resting the 3rd Master of Fairy Tail back on the ground. Wizard Saint or not, I will not let you go out there in the cold, Master. I swear an oath of the dragon. The thunder rumbled in the air even though not a single thundercloud was present in the sky. I swear that Gildarts is out there. I swear that you will remain Guild Master of Fairy Tail until your time comes, and I swear that everyone, is going to make it through this, with or without Gildarts. Makarov stared at the son of Igneel and finally, the old man broke down before the rosette. Thank you, Natsu. Natsu chuckled, anytime, Ji-chan. Suddenly a large shadow encompassed the two males. They blinked in confusion, staring at one another before looking up. Their bodies became ghostly pale as there was a large sound of crying and cheers as a large tidal wave of people rose up. Master. What the fuck? Natsu and Makarov were suddenly swept away by the wave of people before crashing into the ground as they were dog-piled by the Fairy Tail members. Natsu's right, we're not letting you go, Urza said. Aye sir, Happy exclaimed. Like Flame Brain said, you're now getting out those door unless you go through us, Gray added. A man should never leave his friend behind, Elfman said with tears in his eyes. Makarov released a toothy grin as he enlarged his body and engulfed all of his guild members in a titan embrace. I truly am blessed to have a guild like this, he thought as tears streamed down his face. He then rested them all down on the ground, signs Urza. Very well, I will remain you master, but on the condition that Natsu tell me how the hell he got so goddamn wordy. Seriously, how'd you get that kind of vocabulary in 3 months' time? Natsu scratched his face in embarrassment. Well, Roshi-sensei made me read and well. I picked up a few things. That book on inspiring quotes was the one that helped me expand it the most though. Makarov laughed loudly before ruffling Natsu's hair with his giant finger. You've grown up quite well, Natsu. I'm sure Ignil would be proud. Thank you, Ji-chan. It means a lot to me to hear you say that. Makarov nodded at Natsu's response before he shrunk down, Urza dropping down next to him before a golden magic seal burst into existence beneath them. Well, I'm going to drop back Urza at the Magic Council for her rehabilitation. She should return within a few days' time, so don't attack them if they take too long. Natsu, that goes double for you. Yes, Ji-chan. The Dragonslayer of Fire sweat dropped. Makarov nodded before smiling at all the people in his guild. I love you like any parent would. Thank you for being in my life. The members of Fairy Tail grinned before thrusting their hands into the air. Lucy merely copying them since she had no idea behind the significance of the L shape she made with her index and thumb of her raised hand. Makarov smirked before returning the hand sign. He then gripped Urza's hand and the two vanished in a flash of golden light. Insert music. Pokemon R.B.Y. Lavender Town Metal Remix. Raven Tail Guild. Outskirts of Fury Obra walked in through the caverns of the rocky guild area that made up the Raven Tail Guild's quarters. Black and brown stone, some lined with crystals, caught the light of the sun that poked in through the numerous cracks that lay along the walls of the stony caverns. Finally, Obra came to a stop before the large doors which led to his master's room. The blue insignia for Raven Tail stood proudly on its surface. A knock echoed throughout the halls as Obra tapped his fist against the steel doors. Enter, came the slightly muffled voice on the other end of the doors. Obra nodded as he pushed them open. As he stepped through the creaking steel doors, a slight amount of friction triggered the formation of sparks with the ground. As Obra walked up to the throne of his master, a black cloud of shadow emerged on Obra's shoulder. Lucy, the black devil-like creature, appeared. The little imp had its large devilish smirk present upon its face as it adjusted the crown of leaves it wore on its face, white, round eyes gleaming with mischief. Hee hee hee. Lucy giggled as it crawled upon Obra's top hat. Lucy, Obra, what have you uncovered? Obra blinked, his bird-like eyes glancing upwards at the little creature upon his hat, and nodded. Lucy giggled once more before leaping into the airspace between Obra and Iwan and suddenly transformed into a cloud of black smoke. Suddenly the smoke took on the shape of an empty rain before magic energy filled its insides. The energy began to swirl with color before the images of Lucy's memories began to take shape. The Magic Council's archive room. Well, this is sure to be a treat, Iwan said with a look of interest on his face, releasing a small chuckle as he leaned forward. The images began to fast forward through what Lucy deemed as unnecessary information before stopping and resuming regular speed as it came upon the images of Shikamaru, Choji and Ino. Ah yes, the next generation of the Ino Shika Cho trio. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi. However, Iwan's eyes began to widen as he watched the three speak about a young blonde by the name of Naruto. He then continued to watch the conversation between the three rune knights until Lucy's memories revealed the images of Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki and Naruto all on one screen. Even before Shikamaru's dialogue had revealed the information, Iwan's quick mind was capable of piecing together the information at a much quicker pace. A child? He exclaimed with surprise, rising from his throne. Minato and Kushina had a child? A son? Shikamaru closed his eyes. He snapped them back open, is the son of two wizard saints. Minato Namikaze the Kiroi Senko, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze the Akaichi Shio no Habanero and their son, Naruto. Uzumaki, Namikaze. The image and dialogue of Shikamaru met Iwan's eyes and ears, and the Raven Tail Master could only fall back into his seat with surprise and awe written all over his face. How is this even possible? There was no news of them ever conceiving a child. The Magic Council would have made it public knowledge, unless those two never wanted the information to be public. Iwan muttered to himself. A child conceived with the downfall of Konohagakure and still alive, but the question is, where's the boy? I must utilize all information resources I have at my disposal in order to bring this boy to me. The son of two wizard saints is indeed much too powerful for many a mage to handle, including myself. Lucy, contact Hades of Grimoire Heart. The inner area of the smoke ring that was Lucy became a vivid shade of violet. After a few seconds of waiting, the violet took on a shade of black before morphing into the silhouette of the former second master of Fairy Tail. What is your reason for contacting Grimoire Heart, boy? Hades growled out on his end of the connection. Hades. There is an interesting piece of information that you should be aware of, Iwan said with a bit more alarm that he wanted to. Hades raised an invisible eyebrow. Fairy Tail member. And what, pray tell, would that be, Iwan? The man formerly known as Purhito stroked his beard as he took note of Iwan's alarmed tone of voice. Hades, my information sources have just informed me of a piece of information that involves the deceased members of the 10 wizard saints, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Iwan gulped. They had a son. If Hades had any time to be thankful for sitting in the shadows, it would have been at this exact time, as the look on his face was nothing but priceless. His uncovered eye was wide with shock and his mouth was agape. His form began to shiver slightly at the prospect of two wizard saints having had a child. Are you certain of this information? Do you have proof? Yes, Hades. Shikamaru Nara, the to-be head tactician, had pieced it together, and with an IQ of over 200 and the thinking process that rivals that of a supercomputer, it would be hard to not doubt his thought processes. The boy is indeed intelligent beyond anyone in his age group among the Rune Knights, even greater than that of his father, Shikaku. Iwan, I still have doubts towards this information, but should it be true, what do you expect to gain from telling me about this? If this information is indeed true, Hades. The boy has been alive for the past 20 years, and if he is a mage and is any bit as powerful as his parents, the boy could be a menace and a thorn in the side of any dark guild that crosses his path, including our own. You possess the necessary manpower, and power on a whole, to attempt to defeat an opponent of this magnitude, and even if I were to not tell you of this and attempt to actually recruit the boy into Raventail, I would most surely fail, as Minato and Kushina were only at the age of 19 when they were enlisted into the ranks of the 10 Wizard Saints. I do not wish to take the chance of risking my guild and my life against the boy. You do have many valid reasons behind your explanation. However, what I plan to do should this boy be located and found by me. You will not find out if that is one of your ulterior motives. Do not forget, Iwan. I was there when Makarov's bride gave birth to you, and I helped raise you with Makarov when she passed. In doing so, I know you and I know where you live, and I know that if you attempt to pull the wool over my eyes and take this boy from me, there is no force in the world that will defend you from my wrath. Iwan nodded, Hades doing the same. So, what is this name of this young lad? Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Tartaro's Guild, Underground Caverns, Fury. In the bowels of the earth there lay the strongest dark guild ever in existence. Tartaros was the embodiment of all that dark guilds stood for. They had strength, they were merciless, and most of all, they didn't give a damn about anybody else other than their own. Currently, in the head building of the Tartaros Guild, the shadow-encased man that was the master sat in his cushy leather chair before the fire, a steaming cup of tea held in his hand. The master of Tartaros stirred the silver spoon in his cup, the tea swirling in a miniature whirlpool of heated water and herbs. He smirked as he sipped it. Divine. He muttered to himself as he stared into the blue flames of his fireplace. Suddenly, his gray eyes shifted to the right as the sound of footsteps. He turned to see his second in command, Gaia, walk up to him. Gaia's vibrant green eyes shone brilliantly as they caught the light of the blue fires before they were obscured by her glasses that she placed back on her face after cleaning the lenses. She was currently dressed in an earth-colored dress with a slit on the left side that left much of her leg exposed. A pair of black high heels were worn on her feet. Her black hair with a single blonde streak running through it was tied up in a neat ponytail. Beside her was her only other guild mate, who was ranked under the title of Primordial, Oranos. Oranos was a well-dressed young man, just like his earth-using comrade. He had blinding white hair that was lightly spiked and had a similarly styled goatee. He had a rather angular face with a very square-looking jawline and a rounded nose. His eyes were a deep sky blue, had tanned skin, and was fairly muscular, but his lean build was easily covered by the fact that he wore a dark blue tuxedo with sky blue vertical stripes decorating it. A black tie was worn around the collar of the black shirt he wore underneath his tux. To complete the outfit was a pair of black dress shoes. Nay, Gaia-chan. No, Oranos, I will not have SX with you. Can't you go bother the other girls in this guild? Gaia asked. Ah, but Gaia-chan, you're the only one who I actually like. Everyone else is so. Willing to sleep you? Oh yes, the horror, Gaia said with a deadpan tone. Yes, exactly that, Oranos said, pointing at her. Rejection is quite the turn-on. He added, waggling his eyebrows before frowning, thrusting his hands into his pockets as he did so. You know this, me bothering you for SX, thing might end a lot quicker if you just agreed to have SX. Look, we can discuss why I will never touch that thing between your legs except in the case of where I cut it off with a scythe, later. Gaia growled. But for now, let's just discuss what the master wants to speak to us about. Insert music. 2 steps from hell-moving mountains. The master chuckled at his 2 primordials before clapping lightly. You two never fail to amuse me when you are both together. One might think that the master of Tartaros would be against feelings of camaraderie, but the gray-eyed man understood much about the workings of the well-oiled machine that was a guild. If one's productivity rates were to be maximized, it is best done in an environment in which the workplace was suitable and the workers got along well. Being underground made it suitable to remain hidden and allowing for his subordinates to mingle and do as they pleased within the parameters he had constructed, allowing them to be more willing to work for him. Though he would not tolerate weakness of any sort, an act punishable by death, he was a very lenient man despite being the self-proclaimed Grand Ruler of the Balam Alliance. It was exactly the reason why he was such a patient man, capable of dealing with practically any situation involving his subordinates, especially the ones involving Gaia and Oranos. The pleasure of your amusement is all we can grant you, Master, Oranos said with a small smile before his face became a mask of seriousness. So why is it that you called Gaia-chan and I hear, Master? Well, Urano's, Gaia. As you all know, recent reports have showed us that over recent times, the Ogo no Fujin and Onibi Myobu are beginning to make themselves very noticeable within almost every single major set of events that have been occurring these past few months. The fall of my subordinate guild, Black Knight. The news that Gildarts Clive was defeated by him and left a large scar on the earth that extended from the forests outside Harjan all the way to the Furian Sea. The fall of Phantom Lord and the killing of Jose Porla, the 10 Wizard Saint member. It will be extremely soon in which they will begin to leave their mark on the world, and as such they have been beginning to pique my interest, especially that little Kitsune. Why the Onibi Myobu, Master? Surely we could do much more if we take in the Ogo no Fujin, Gaia said. Because, Gaia, the thing is that the Ogo no Fujin is human. So are we, Master. Yet, you don't throw us away, Urano stated. A true fact, but the thing is I have enough human resources as it is, and so I think it's time I get a different kind of resource. The Onibi Myobu is a beast of unimaginable power, as it is in my opinion that its power is capable of rivaling, if not exceeding that of the Fujins. Imagine, harnessing the blazing inferno of energy in that Kitsune. If the legends are correct as well, Kitsune are capable of growing up to 9 tails and increase in strength, with each TA set on my side will aid me in finally bringing fury and soon, the entirety of Earthland, to its knees. So you wish us to find the Onibi Myobu, Master? Ranos asked. The Master of Tartaros sipped his tea, chuckling as he did so. His gray eyes gaining an incredibly evil look as the blue flames reflected in his pupils, giving the image that his eyes were ablaze. Oh no, my dear Primordial, I don't want you to find it. I want you to capture it and then we will break it. We will make the beast bow down at my feet and it will then become my pet. The beast will be mine to command, and with the power of an eventual Kyuubi no Yoko under my belt, I can truly have the world kneel before me. The legends of the Kyuubi no Yoko also speak of it being able to flatten mountains, conjure up tidal waves and create storms through a mere flicking of its tails. The Master grinned widely. The world will be engulfed in fire and blood, and then Tartaros will emerge from the depths and engulf the world in a new dark age that not even Zareth can compare to. Zareth, eat you heart out. Oranos grinned toothily. Are we to deploy the titans or the demons to search for the two? Gaia asked as she adjusted her black-framed glasses once more. The Master stretched as he rose up from his leather chair and cracked his tense joints before walking up to the fireplace, all but his face, now visible. The man was apparently extremely muscular, powerful muscles rippling beneath the skin with every step he took. His form towered over even Oranos' impressive height of 6 feet, though he was nowhere near as tall as Zabrak Grandful of Oracion Siete. His height was still impressive, measuring at 6 feet and 5 inches. The Master of Tartaros' clothing consisted of a rust-colored bodysuit being composed entirely of durable magic-infused chainmail. Over the chainmail was a set of Greek-styled armor. The armor's chest plate, also known as a muscle cuirass, was pitch black with golden lionesses standing on their hind legs on either side of the armor, outlining the abdominal and pectoral areas of the cuirass. In the center of the pectoral area was an image of 3 golden leaves connected to each other by a single stem. The shoulders were of a brick red color, outlined with thick lines of gold. However, most of the red that made up the shoulder armor plates were each covered by the image of a single ram-horned beast. On his forearms, the Master wore golden arm bracers and his hands were covered with golden-plated armored gloves. His lower body was covered by the skirt-like article of clothing that most Greek warriors wore and was composed of a durable type of rust-colored cloth with numerous silver circular holes at the tip of each strand of cloth that made up the man's skirt. Covering up the majorly right area of the skirt was a dark red cloth that was decorated with golden Greek meanders along the edge that stretched diagonally across from the left hip to the right of the dark guild master. Golden shin armor was worn on the man's legs and dark red, open-toed sandals were worn on his feet. Oh, well, we don't have to lift a finger. In time, the Kitsune will appear in plain sight, and when he does, we will strike. East Forest, Fury, I never told you could move, you idiotic human. Porla Yuzuka growled as she finished applying the golden-colored medical salve to her patient. Said patient became very quiet as the pain he felt was much too horrible to bear and bit the leather belt harshly between his teeth. Now, hold on. This will hurt a lot, she informed him. Her patient nodded and Porla Yuzuka began attaching nervous fibers to the conductive wires on the prosthetic limbs she held. The man grunted loudly as the limbs were attached and sighed in relief as the pain began to recede. What is this? The patient asked as he looked at his new prosthetic left arm and leg. These are prosthetic limbs I ordered from the town of Rush Valley in the neighboring land of Seven. These kinds of prosthetics are not of the regular wooden ones or plastic ones that you find in regular hospitals or medical centers within Fury and can only be received from Rush Valley. It is composed of a powerful metal alloy. This type of prosthesis is the greatest of any kind, automail. Automail limbs are generally made with a full steel skeletal frame layered with steel armor plating to protect the various wires and intricate machinery inside. However, contemporary technological advancements have allowed certain automales to be comprised of other materials such as carbon fiber, fiberglass, chrome, copper, nickel and aluminum alloys, so as to be less cumbersome and more durable than steel in abnormal conditions. Linked directly to the nervous system, an automale prosthesis does not usually require an external energy source to perform any sort of mechanical movement, and can be moved at will like a natural appendage, taking electrical pulses from the nerves to power and regulate the various electric motors and pneumatic actuators inside. This is amazing. The man sent a mental command to form a fist with his new prosthetic and his eyes widened when the metallic limb responded accordingly, a tightly clenched fist meeting his vision. I can't thank you enough for doing this for me. I mean, I've been told I'm strong, but with these automale limbs I'm going to totally kick major ass. I mean, if can I employ my crash magic? Guild arts. Poor Lyuzica spoke with a frown on her face, her red eyes staring into the now conscious ace of fairy tale. Yeah, she sighed, you can't use magic energy through automale limbs? Magic flows through the magic circulatory system by circumventing magical energy, that is, eternano, from the atmosphere throughout the body, through the magic circulatory system and into the limbs and other areas of the body. With your flesh and blood arm and leg being lost in your battle with the Ogo no Fujin, your link to your biological system has been severed, the only link being your electrical impulses traveling along the nervous fibers to the conductive wires in the prostheses to allow for your movement like I told you about before. The pink-haired woman explained. Gildarts's eyes widened before he glanced down at the floor with a sad look on his face. I see. So I can't use magic in these limbs, huh? So what can I do then? He asked. What you can do is stay here. B-B, but the others, they need to know that I'm okay. I will deal with that in time, but Gildarts, you can't leave because you need to undergo the rehabilitation session needed to get used to having prosthetic limbs, not to mention the fact that you haven't moved in over 3 months and so you also require a large amount of physical therapy. You may be strong, Gildarts Clive, but you are still human. Poor Lyuzica turned away from Gildarts and began to work on some healing potions. It will take quite a bit of time to get used to them, so don't push yourself. If you break that arm and leg, there's no telling how long it will take for me to get a new set for you. I've studied enough on mechanical engineering however to fix any minor damages and to do tune-ups on the arm and leg. Gildarts sighed before smiling softly at the crimson-eyed woman. I understand. Thank you, poor Lyuzica-san. I am forever in your debt. If there is anything at all that I can do for you, do not hesitate to ask. You're damn right you owe me. Poor Lyuzica muttered. But you're welcome. Now shut up you stupid human and get to work on that rehab. You're not going to learn how to be combat or household effective with that metal piece of junk by just sitting around and smiling like a jackass. Yes ma'am. There are many ways in which beings, divine and mortal alike, have thought the creation of the universe came about. In the current world that exists today there is a popular theory that came to be known as the Big Bang. A forceful collision of energies that suddenly appeared and exploded outwards, expanding at a rapid rate. The law of conservation of energy states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and so per that same law, it was then said that these energies converted themselves into the forms we all know today. Stars, planets and many more that accumulated to form the universe. In the current worlds that exist today, those that possess creatures of unimaginable strength and status, there are many versions to how the universe was made that extended from the Big Bang theory. In the current world of magic, there existed the mighty dragons, the first creatures to ever exist in the timeline known simply as the beginning. In one version of the universe's creation, it was said that the universe began as a void of nothingness. There was nothing but the blackness of the void, but that changed as the existence of the energy came to be. Matter came into existence in order to counter the existence of the void that was composed entirely of antimatter. The collision of these two opposite energy particles resulted in the Big Bang, and these energies fused to form the entities known as the dragons. From a single egg, 4 dragons sprouted from the egg. These dragons ruled over the void and controlled the 4 laws of the universe. Energy, time, force and void, also known as space. After many a millennium of floating in the bath of energy that resulted from their hatching, they decided on filling the void. They gave birth to the universe as they used their unimaginable powers to shape entire galaxies and split apart the universe into 2 halves. One half where they would watch over their creation and the other half being where everything else existed. Finally, before leaving to the divine realm they had created, they used some of their energy to present the universe with the ability to become a possibly sentient being, ever expanding and ever existing. Another version presented itself in which the void was consisted of 2 halves. The same principle of opposites was applied in which the void gave birth to one half being becoming the mighty first dragon, the Dragon King. The other half was a mighty beast which bore no resemblance to any sort of creature that existed today. The Dragon King represented order, matter and life, while the beast became the embodiment of chaos, antimatter and death. These 2 creatures were in a seemingly never-ending deadlock. The beast with its single red-eye power and 10 tails, the sources of its divine powers, made itself an extremely worthy opponent to the equally mighty Dragon King. Their clashes resulted in energy backlashes that eventually formed the universe itself as the law of conservation of energy came into play once more. Thus, the single universe was born from this titanic clash. However, while the existence of a single universe is indeed looked upon as quite an idea, there were those who believed there to be other universes. A multiverse, if you will. The multiverse consists of numerous parallel universes which contain worlds similar or completely identical to the ones adjacent to it, but with major or minor differences. For example, a planet in one universe could be a large thriving civilization while in the one parallel to it, the planet would be completely barren and have no form of life. From the two universe creation theories shown above, the multiverse theory was brought about in the first version by saying that the four divine dragons, after making the universe sentient, had succeeded in their quest to do so. The universe then began to always expand and began to branch off, forming alternate realities, parallel worlds and completely different universes that were always bonded to its original form. These branches contained the different worlds within it, but due to the existence of civilizations in many of them, it was nearly impossible for said civilizations to distinguish which of the multiverse parts was actually the original universe. Only the four divine knew. In the second portion, the Dragon King and the Beast's power struggle resulted in the formation of a black hole before them. The Dragon King pushed the immortal beast into the wormhole where it was sent into another portion of the single universe where it was said to have released its energies and formed a parallel universe and forged worlds of its own creation where it was the supreme ruler before claiming one to be its point of origin. With these tales in mind, it is from here where our story begins. Over a millennium ago, when the origin of magic was beyond the grasp of the mages of new and old alike, the world of magic that ruled within the mortal realm of the humans was controlled by three powerful species. These three were the elves, fairies, and dragons. The oldest of creatures were of course, the reptilian beasts who were revered as gods among the magical realm. The dragons of old have lived within the thousands, controlling powers that made them the divine beings that they were amongst the humans. Among these were 11 supreme dragons. Dragons who ruled over the many other members of the draconian population, but all bowed down to one, the Dragon King. Though that is a story that all of old know, though what they did not know was that there was a 12th dragon. XXX within the shadows of the realm of Earthland, there is a place thought only to have been in the existence of fables, tall tales and myths. A place where the land shifted, where gravity held little to no existence. It was distorted plain, a plain where there was no sunlight or life. This place was known by many names: the Distortion World, Plagued Realm, a realm of phantoms, and to the mighty dragons, this place was given the title of the Outer Realm. From levitating areas of Earth, there were areas where waterfalls was present, but the odd thing was that the waterfalls fell every which way. Sideways, up, they even fell diagonally. The plane that made up the Outer Realm had several levels of levitating floors made of earth that reached the surface where it was closest to reach the surface world, to the bottom which resided within the shadows. There in this plane stood a black sphere that resided in the bottom of the Outer Realm. The sphere expanded and shrunk in periodic movements as if it were alive. The sound of pulsating energy made the dark sphere vibrate lightly with each pulse. These sounds and motions made it appear as if the sphere itself was alive. However, what lay within the sphere was something that was meant to have been locked away. A pair of ominous slant-shaped eyes slowly opened themselves within the blackness, casting a bright shine within the darkness. After so long, it was time to bring years of waiting in this hellhole into fruition. The time to strike was now, and finally the multiverse would be torn asunder and everything that stood in his way would be crushed beneath him. The pieces were in place, the die was cast, and now the game begins. K.D. Dragonslayer Naruto's POV. Eastern Mountain Range, Fury the 110-year-old blonde walked towards the area where he had once made his home. Deep within the mountains outside of the nearby Clover Town, Naruto spied the clear area where he had spent the large majority of his childhood training and living with Agnologia and Kurama. Said Exceed sat atop Naruto's head as he began to scan the area with his crimson eyes. "I think this would be suitable, don't you think?" the fox costume cat asked. "I would believe so," Naruto replied. Kurama nodded as he sprouted his wings and floated next to the blonde's head. "Well, what are you waiting for? Get on with it," Kurama exclaimed. Naruto growled lightly as the kitsune-like cat yelled in his ears, but he then activated his magic to carry out the task as hand. He opened a pocket dimension THR and pulled out the magic pen he used to make his seal formulas. He first drew a gargantuan spiral in the center of the clearing before drawing numerous, lengthy chains of seal kanji, making the finished product appear as if it were a sun of some sort. Naruto then raised his hand to his lips and lightly pressed his thumb against his sharpened canines, enough to draw blood. He made sure to act quickly before his healing factor would automatically kick in, and so he slammed his hand on the ground and his magic spiked when he did so. Magic flowed through the violet-colored seal formula, causing it to pulsate as the energy continued to rise. The seal formula then became a pure black. Seal magic. Some technique. A large violet magic seal sprung up over the large seal and an equally large tower of magic energy burst forth before a large white plume of smoke appeared. When the smoke and magic energy dissolved into the atmosphere, standing before the Apocalypse Dragonslayer and strongest of the 9 Biju exceed, was the large stone castle that was the former guild of Phantom Lord, now the main headquarters of Naruto's spy network. Well, I'll be damned, it actually worked, Kurama muttered. Of course it did. Naruto said with an annoyed glance at his partner, it's my seal formula. That you completed from researching your father's and mother's notes. Kurama pointed out. Well, more your mother's, since the journals you read said that Minato learned most of his seal magic from Kushina herself. Naruto snarled, his eyes flashing white. Annoying feline, he growled before they flickered back to their original blue once more. True, I may have utilized the notes Minato and Kushina left behind for me to find, but the end result is of my own creation. I had already made the designs for interdimensional matter transportation at an earlier date. I just never was able to find a way to stabilize the makeshift black hole that is used to transport the object or objects through the tunnel. Well, those notes certainly helped as you were finally able to figure out that you needed to use another seal formula that would be placed at the area that you want the object or objects to be summoned in order to act as an exitway for the ones you placed the identical seal formula on, thus acting as a linked tunnel between the two seals. Not to mention the fact that you were to use your magic to act as a beacon on the exitway formula so that the energy would be able to be absorbed into the black hole, lightly coating the object being transported as it occurs so that it wouldn't be torn apart at the speed it moves at. Kurama said as he pointed at the vanishing, formula above the doors of the castle. A period of silence passed between the two as they basked in the glow of Naruto's triumph in seal magic. By the way, you never did tell me, tell you what? Well, when you first attempted this kind of thing, remember you used an experimental subject. Oh, yes. I recall it was a mage from that dark guild that had been trafficking slaves to Bosco. Titan Nose, I think it was called. The guy the first used claimed he was actually the salamander of Fairy Tail. That exact same guy. Kurama confirmed. Yes, well, I believe that due to the physics behind black holes and matter transportation, it would be safe to say that he probably got reduced to a gelatinous mass somewhere in Earthland. Gelatinous mass. Yes. You see, the principle of moving something through a black hole works in a way similar to how one sees, for example, a sponge being shoved down a sink drain. The fluids within the sponge are forced out due to the compression within the tiny tunnel and soon coats it in soap suds and water. With respect to this seal formula, the mage I used would have had the exact same thing happen to him, only with his blood and internal organs. The speeds at which he would then rapidly become viscous and form a gelatinous mass around the mage's lack of a body, and given the fact that I had no exitway seal prepared, the exit gateway black hole that would pop up would appear randomly at any location in Earthland. Naruto explained. You know, I actually understood most of that. Idiot, Naruto's sweat dropped at the smirking exceed. The physically 20-year-old Dragonslayer walked up to the wooden doors and was about to open them when he saw Kurama pause in his flight beside him. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he Kurama stare up at the castle walls. Following the kitsune-costumed cat's gaze, he saw the feline gazing at the large pieces of cloth that bore the symbol of Phantom Lord on it still. Kurama held up 2 paws and sent a volley of crimson fireballs through the air. Each fireball that flew through the air impacted with any and all banners of the former Phantom Lord Guild and was immediately burned to ash. Satisfied with his work, Kurama grinned toothily at the blue-eyed Dragonslayer, who rolled his eyes. Oh come on, you know you love it. Shut up, annoying feline. Kurama chuckled alongside Naruto as they entered through the wooden doors of the castle. Inside, there was a slight bustle of activity as the members of Naruto's spy network sat and made conversation, eating and drinking and whatever it was that guild people did in their spare time. Currently, there were only 20 mages within the castle walls from the total that was previously 69. Fujin-sama. The mages stood up and bowed to their new leader. Naruto nodded and motioned for them to stop bowing. So have you finished? Kurama asked. Yes, Myobu-sama. Another spy member replied. We have redone the entire first floor to your specifications and we have done it to the best of our abilities. Are you both pleased? A third asked with a nervous look in his eyes. We shall see once we finish looking through it, Naruto said as he adjusted his face mask out of sheer habit. The inside of the castle was no longer dark and dreary as it once was. With the opening of the windows and the removal of the torches allowing for the natural light of the sun to enter, the place was slightly brighter. Slightly being because Naruto had decided to have the walls of the castle painted a dark blue that was such a dark shade it was almost considered black. Paintings of dragons, griffins and other mythological creatures lined the walls. Obviously, anything that was related to Phantom Lord and Jose Porla had been removed and burned via the new large fireplace that sat at the end of the first floor's wall, where an eternal crimson flame courtesy of Kurama always burned within it. Naruto had continuously made it a habit to knock, causing a specific spy network member to go to open the doors, only for them to be kicked in and sent him flying into the center stone wall that lay directly across from the main doors of the castle. The man's imprint had been an amusing part of the castle's interior, and so Naruto and Kurama decided not to have the imprint removed and the bricks of the castle redone on that area, and it hung humorously over the fireplace as if it were a trophy that one won from a hunt. The balcony that hung over said wall was completely removed and replaced with an elevated flat floor that was capable of being accessed to via the pair of curved black marble staircases that lay on either side of the wall and ended at the floor's location. Upon said elevated floor area was a single black throne that was placed in a strategic location that allowed the one who sat in it to oversee any and all activity on the lower area. Beside it was a large red velvet pillow with golden trim. "I like this floor. They even got my pillow specifications right," Kurama said as he plopped down on the fluffy pillow. Naruto sat upon the ebony throne. Despite being made of obsidian, the chair was surprisingly comfortable due to Naruto having designed the chair to have the backrest, headrest, armrests and seat to be made of sponge-filled black bull leather. Everything else was obsidian as previously mentioned before. On the elevated floor, a gold and silver carpet lay across the floors and went up the stairs that led to the upper floors on either side of the castle, which led to the living quarters of all the mages that were in Naruto's spy network. Naruto had decided that he wouldn't change much on that floor, just for the walls being painted dark blue, as he was right to assume that his subordinates would be against his changing of their living quarters, having become accustomed to a certain setting. "This floor is very well done. I commend your work," Naruto spoke. His subordinates released the breaths they were unconsciously holding in. "Thank you, Fujin-sama. Myobu-sama, I trust you are happy as well." "Quiet, I'm pillow talking," Kurama growled out before he began curling up on his new velvet pillow. The spy network members and Naruto all sweat dropped at the exceed. "Fujin-sama, pardon any disrespect, but is Myobu-sama always this way?" "Only when it comes to this pillow apparently." He then turned to the subordinate before him. "Now have you completed the third floor area?" "We have, Fujin-sama." The mage motioned for his leader to follow him upstairs. Naruto nodded and was about to follow before sighing as the sound of soft "nyas" reached his ears. "Come on you mangy cat. No pillow-chan," Kurama yelled with anime tears streaming down his face as he was separated from his beloved red velvet friend. "Shut up, you'll get to see it again after we're done looking over the third floor." Kurama nodded before he released himself from Naruto's grip and rested atop the young man's golden head of hair. "You ever mention my nickname to Pillow-chan to anyone and I'll kill you. You can try, but I'm still going to hold that as blackmail towards you." "Fuck you," Kurama growled at the Dragonslayer as they headed up the stairs to the third floor. Once they reached the third floor, the mage gestured to it and Naruto and Kurama looked to see a large black wall at the top of the stairs they had climbed and a large silver-colored door before them. Reinforced titanium door, one magic conductive, golden doorknob and one do not disturb sign, the subordinate smirked. "Even though we told you only about the door, the sign is quite an amusing, yet welcoming touch," Naruto said with a smirk beneath his face mask. He then made a few hand motions and tapped the doorknob and suddenly a small magic seal appeared on it, coating it with a complicated-looking seal array before the violet kanji vanished into thin air. "Fujin-sama, my lock and security system for my door," Naruto replied immediately before he opened the door. The titanium rectangle opened inwards and Naruto looked around, his lower lip protruding slightly as he nodded his head in approval. Not bad. The room was colored dark blue like the rest of the interior walls of the castle. The room was quite large, large enough to fit a fully grown female wyvern. A large queen-sized bed sat in the far end, central area of the room with a pair of black painted wooden side tables. Large glass windows were open to let in the light and the black satin curtains billowed in the wind. A large bookcase was present to the left side of the room and was what Naruto planned to use to store the various books he had gotten for his various birthdays when he was younger, but never got around to reading. Next to the bookcase was a large mahogany desk and cushy-looking, black leather chair. That swiveled. "First spin," Kurama commented as he jumped atop the chair from Naruto's head, however Naruto snatched the exceed out of the air and glared at him. "My chair," Naruto said with a look that appeared like the one you would find in an animal defending its territory. Kurama raised a non-existent eyebrow at Naruto as he was held by his hood before vanishing in a plume of fire and reappearing in a similar swirl of crimson flame above the chair and plopped down on it before twisting to make it spin. Naruto clenched his fists tightly to personify his anger before deciding to observe the rest of the room so that he and Kurama wouldn't destroy it from one of their fights that they tended to have. So the left side of the room is a study area. What's on this side? Naruto thought. The Ogono Fujin observed the right side, which consisted of a large wooden drawer set and a wardrobe closet. Directly across from the two clothing storage units was a much larger red velvet pillow with golden trim. Only this one has a flame pattern stitched into its surface. "I shall call you Omega Pillow-chan, because you are much more awesome than Pillow-chan downstairs," Kurama muttered and did as he planted face first into the soft pillow. On the far end was a mahogany door that led to the bathroom. Naruto turned to the subordinate that stood, fidgeting nervously as he awaited his leader's comments. Naruto paused, causing the man to tense up, something that made Naruto smirk. By the dragons. I missed the feeling of instilling fear in people just for the fun of it. It is a very nice room. I approve of the state of mind and the Onabai's living quarters. You're free to do as you wish for the rest of the day. Understood, Fujin-sama, Myobu-sama. The two leaders of the spy network nodded to the subordinate as he left the room. He totally pissed himself. Kurama snickered with a toothy grin. It's going to take a while to remove the smell of ammonia from here. I'm glad the windows were open for the majority of my observation of our new living quarters. Naruto said as he walked towards one of the windows and gazed out at the beautiful mountain scenery. Naruto then turned and opened a pocket dimension and began to stock his bookshelf with the books he had gotten for his past birthdays, and then placed the seal-guarded chest that held his biological parents' prized seal magic notes, family history journals, and whatnot. He clicked it open with a simple touch of his finger as the seal registered his fingerprint before he pricked his finger and unlocked every single other lock that held the chest closed. Gotta love DNA-based seals. Naruto smirked as he pulled down his mask and began to go through the chest until he fished out the photo album. He placed the book that Kurama nearly charred onto one of the book's shelves along with his favorite toy. The little drum rattle released a hollow thunk as it was rested down on the wooden shelf. The son of Agnology had then picked up the chest and placed it back into his pocket dimension, sealing it closed with a few hand motions. Naruto then breathed deeply, ingesting a large amount of eternano from the atmosphere to sat the hunger he was currently feeling. However, as he was feasting on the atmospheric magic energy, he quickly stopped when he felt a pulse of magic enter his jaws. Though his metabolism quickly broke down the foreign magic and made the energy his own, the blue-eyed young man now had a bad taste left in his mouth. Kurama. Kurama rose up from Omega Pillow-chan's fluffy depths. Did you feel that? Feel Kurama paused as he activated his negative emotion sensing abilities as a second pulse of magic entered the room. Kurama's ears and nose twitched, his eyes glowing much brighter. South, in the forests. Let's go. Kurama sprouted his wings and Naruto leapt out of the window and the two flew south and through the forests of the mountain range at a high speed. A trail of dust and large gusts of wind marked their trail as trees toppled from the speed of the passing winds they generated from their high-speed movement. Kurama, who was in the lead, came to a stop at a flowing mountain river that flowed down the slope of the mountain. I know I sensed it here. Kurama stated seriously. My sensing abilities are second to none out of us 9 and all of us are adept at sensing. There is something here. I felt the anger and hatred coupled by the malevolent magic coming from this location. I do not doubt your sensing capabilities, Kurama. I too felt the pulse of magic. The whisker-marked blonde frowned deeply as he began to glance around the area. But the question is, WHHAT foul-tasting magic energy? I don't know, but whatever it is it must be extremely powerful if it is capable of. Naruto continued to glance around before a golden eyebrow arched in confusion. Insert music. Fairy tale Akuma Deliora. Capable of what? Kurama? Naruto turned to the Exceed and Sapphire orbs widened slightly as he saw Kurama just floating in midair, mouth agape as he was frozen in mid-speech. He waved his hand in front of the Exceed's face, snapping his fingers as well, but the Onibi Myobu didn't even blink in response. However, Naruto suddenly caught wind of the lack of sound occurring. The river nearby him stopped flowing, the birds in the air hung in the air and the leaf that was blowing in the wind, currently a lack thereof, was stuck a few feet in front of his face. Suddenly, the world began to appear to lose color and Naruto watched with interest as the world around him stopped and his vision was only capable of seeing things in black and white with shades of gray. Naruto activated his magic and the wind swirled to life around him, but despite that, the world remained immobile. Impossible. What the hell is this? Naruto snarled as his eyes changed to the shining white of his draconian father. His eyes then widened as he felt the malevolent magic appear behind him. He turned around as the shining white eyes gazed into a pool of crimson with a single black dot. Good. Your power is exceedingly great in this world, Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse. Now come with me, son of Agnologia. Do not order me, hatchling. I am one of the few, if not the only, fully accomplished Dragonslayers in this world and you would be wise to retrace your steps should I tear out your flesh and feast upon it. The dragon within you. A pleasure to meet your acquaintance. I'm glad I got to appear with you in control rather than your human mentality. How do you know of us? How do you know of this certain mental conundrum? There is much that I know about you, but what I know most of all is that you are mine. I highly disagree with your statement. I am no pawn, Naruto roared as he slashed at the red pool. However, a flash of crimson blinded his sensitive vision. The deep voice that accompanied the presence of the eerie red pool chuckled before it vanished from the Dragonslayer's view. Think again. Now join me in my quest to be free, Dragonslayer, the eye-shaped orb roared as it reappeared behind its chosen target. Naruto's eyes widened and suddenly the feeling of suction greeted him. Naruto brought himself to all fours and the Dragonslayer dug his claw-like nails into the ground to anchor his body. However, the suction proved too great and he lost his grip on the ground. He tried to fly away as he used futon, tobu, but the son of Aknologia could not deny his capture and suddenly he was forced into the wormhole that had appeared. Naruto roared, unleashing bursts of magic and wind as he attempted to resist the pull of the vortex he was currently in. Suddenly, there was a flash of crimson once more. JOA Naruto's POV within the confines of Makarov's temporary office in the smaller guild house. Naruto stood in front of the guild master as the eldest guild member was scavenging through new missions released to the guild and reading through reports. For the past couple weeks, the guild was under reconstruction since the guild's conflicting affairs with Phantom Lord. Though, despite that little escapade, the guild was in need of rebuilding anyway. With the funds that had been received from the council after the charges that were given to the members that had retained certain loyalty Phantom Lord, the guild was in the process of being rebuilt free of charge, of course, following with Fairy Tail being the strongest guild in Fury. This would have been a cause for celebration for the now strongest guild in Fury. Though, if that was the case, then why did Makarov have the disappointed look upon his face? Well, it's simple. Naruto killed Jose, and while Jose was not on equal caliber as Minato or Makarov, Makarov still disapproved of any of his guild members killing despite Naruto's permit. You know, Makarov, you should appreciate the fact that you do not have to listen to Jose's mouth during every guild meeting anymore. The blonde smirked. I did you and everyone else a favor of getting rid of the trash, Naruto said. Makarov looked up to the boy with narrowed eyes before lowering his head and continued to write down mission reports. Despite that, Naruto, you know that it is the moral law of this guild to never kill. The Magic Council can grant you permission, but I still deem it unnecessary. He was a guild master, a fellow saint, and still a legal guild leader. Was a wizard saint and was a guild master of a legal guild. Naruto corrected the wizard saint before him. Jose is dead now, just like most of his element 4. Besides, he was bound to turn dark anyway. He had a stench of foulness on him. I could smell it off him miles away, and I've never seen his face in my entire life until the day I fought him and ended him. Naruto walked towards the window, his hands in his pockets, and stared out into the open view of the mountain terrain. I would have rather killed him than to see him be a dark mage. It lessens the probability of future threats and makes my blood boil at the thought of it. A low animalistic growl erupted from Naruto once he finished speaking. The older man's face basked with sympathy and pity. Sympathy because he knew deep down that he too would have rather heard that his own son was dead than know that he had made a dark guild in order to seek revenge, though the pity was not held for the boy. Naruto was mature, held power without arrogance, kept his mind clear and had a logical and philosophical background with knowledge of history, myth, and battle. But about all else was that Naruto held honor and morals, something that separated him from both mages and dark mages alike. No, it was the regret that the boy held so much pain and anger from such a sorrowful and battle-filled past, for the boy to be raised by the most malevolent force on this earth and to be deemed as its undoubted successor, to become a killing machine. To lose something so precious as life and love, for the boy to hate all of humanity. To scorn his blood parents after 15.5 years of searching and once found. To push his wrath on them until finally ignoring their existence for another 2 years following. That wasn't a life that a child was meant to live, and seeing such cruelty at a young age was above all what caused Naruto to lose his childhood. Makarov looked at the young male and gave a faint smile. Naruto, my boy, I know you mean well, I really do. You came here by force, no one to trust but your closest ally, and with such a grudge against everyone you would never give them the chance. The blonde glanced at the dark eyes of Makarov as the old man continued to speak. Yet, despite the negatives, you began to trust people, even though it became a few. Mirajane, myself. Even Natsu has got on your good side despite his attempts to help you train. You trusted few with your secrets, and despite your cold nature, I can see the kindness in you, even though you attempt to resist it and hold your ground to fight off trusting anymore and to accept and return love, he said. Please, I care for not a single soul in this place. I trust you only because of the respect I have for your strength. I hold mutual respect towards Mirajane for the same reasons, as well as the fact that her magic had piqued my interests. However, I can only handle Natsu's annoying antics simply because he is a fellow Dragonslayer, a stubborn one at that. If he was anything else he would have been broken already and his head mounted on my wall, Naruto said. Naruto turned his head to look at Makarov with cat-like blue eyes. I have no good in me. I only help with Phantom Lord for only my benefit and mine alone. I hold no love for any human. Anything I would have felt has been long dead when it came to my humanly inhead. You say you know that it is not true, Naruto. You respect Mirajane, but not because of her power, but because she is so much like you. Two souls that lost someone dearly. In the recent past, you both would fight with no words, while other times you would ignore one altogether. Then when she lost her sister you saw the pain and you were the one who had helped her. Maybe it wasn't purposely intentional for you, but it happened, and despite hers and Elfman's loss, she still is a mage. You have become like family to her. Through that, you accepted her, Makarov said. Naruto grunted as his eyes narrowed slightly, as heartfelt and disgustingly sweet in terms of the fact that your wide vocabulary makes your words oh so pretty. There remains the fact that that's one person. What difference does that make to me? Makarov grunted in annoyance a bit before resting his arms on the desk and leaning forward. You forget Kaden and Natsu. Kaden is your rival and the only other Dragonslayer who can rival Gildarts and Laxus. You respect him and you kept him around because he is your best friend, and Natsu because as much as he annoys you, you find some kinship towards him. Do I need to go on? Makarov asked. Naruto said nothing as his face was away gazing outside the window. Had he really accepting others without realizing it? Did spending so much time with a bunch of ludicrous mages who are part of a guild cause him to become attached by a small amount? He understood Kaden. The son of Ghidorah had been his first true friend for almost 6 years. Mirajane, he maybe understood, but Natsu? Natsu? If that happened, Naruto would have just let Jose tear the guild apart and let it be consumed by destruction. He would not accept the pink-haired mage anything less than a guild member associate. Nothing more and nothing less. I doubt your words very much, Makarov. I understand most, but I will not accept all of your words. They sound like water in my ears for saying someone like Natsu is accepted by the likes of me, Naruto said. You would be surprised, Naruto. Things can happen without the person knowing. Makarov noticed the blonde giving him a deadpan look which caused the old man to groan. I swear, boy, one day you're going to face yourself and then you'll think, am I really like that? Or, why'd I do this to myself? Or, why the fuck would I am fighting myself? Or why a perverted old man is yapping off his mouth off as he grows closer and closer to death because of it? Naruto said with a hint of dull sarcasm in his tone. Makarov, if I ever get a chance to fight against myself and if there was any chance of me rethinking my outlook on life, I will think of you and I will simply just said, God damn it, old man, Naruto said. Then I guess I should feel gratitude that I could make a life-changing impact on you one day, the old man said. That will be the day I meet someone more perverted, annoying, and serious than Urza, Minato, and you combined, thought Naruto. While somewhere near Harjin town, Jiraiya was peeping at a woman undressing herself with her window left open. A perverted smile of glee was upon the man's face as he chuckled perversely while writing notes. Yes, this will be the perfect subject on my next novel. I can see it now, it will be a one-hit single here, Icha. Western maidens, it will be glorious for all men to accept gloriously, he said before he felt his nose twitch and giving a loud sneeze. Sniffed a bit before looking back at his subject, only to find a fireball made out of magic coming at his face which caused him to fall back as his head and papers were singed and burnt. My research, muttered Jiraiya before his head fell, a dejected look on his face and the anime cloud of depression hanging over his head. Itachi and Gaara looked upon the man, before the two turned around and walked off the building that Jiraiya was on. Moron. Both shinobi thought. XXX, right, Naruto said with little enthusiasm, I doubt that will still ever happen. Makarov sighed and waved his hands. A light knock had echoed through the room and the old man looked up. Come in. The two individuals that had come in brought a frown upon the young blonde's face and, within the confines of his mind, a low growl from the chakra beast within. The two people he wished to never exist were here. Minato, Kushina. He thought. Annoyances, grumbled Kurama from within his confines. Sorry for the delay, Master Makarov. We would have been here a week earlier, but there was a delay of sorts with the mission, Minato said. I wouldn't be surprised, Minato. You and Kushina took a 20-year mission together. I wasn't expecting you to come back within a day or a week. 5 months is a short amount of time to finish a mission such as a 20-year mission, Makarov said to the duo. Minato hummed in agreement before looking at the back of his son. He gave a wearisome smirk as he raised his hand and placed it on Naruto's shoulder. How have you been, Naruto? The only answer he got was a cold look from a set of glowing eyes and low growl emanating from the other blonde's throat before Naruto shrugged his hand of his shoulder. Same as always, I see. Minato sighed, closing his eyes as he rubbed his head. If that is everything, Makarov, I shall be on my way, Naruto said as he moved out of the room without giving Minato and Kushina a second glance. Naruto, said Blonde, turned around to see a rolled up paper tied with a ribbon thrown towards him. Naruto grabbed it and looked at it before looking back at Makarov. I want you to head out to Shirotsume town. There has been some ruckus as of late and I want you to see what is causing the problem. Naruto looked at the old man with some confusion, but simply grunted as he turned around. That is fine, I suppose. I need some getaway time while the pests are here. The blonde spoke before heading out of the office. Makarov shook his head at the boy's words once he left. Naruto was becoming hostile once more. The old guild master looked at Minato and Kushina and smirked. So tell me, what did you find at Bosco? The outskirts of Magnolia Town. Naruto strode along the dirt road in silence, his mind in great thought over what the elder mage had spoken to him about. He narrowed his eyes on the thought of Nakama, the people he could trust, his allies, the people he cared for. Had he been accepting people once he joined the guild? He looked down at his hand and stared at the palm of it for a brief time. Have I really changed that much? He questioned himself. Has my pride and demeanor changed so much that even I have not noticed? If you take it from a person's perspective, someone who has known you for some time, if not your whole life, then yes, it has changed in their eyes. The low voice of Kurama came into the mind of the blonde. I've known you since you were born, Naruto. I have detested the thought of your existence before we had our first conversation. I have seen you grow from a child of innocent mind that held such wisdom and desire of knowledge to a young male who held a wrathful hate towards humanity. A boy whose power to utilize both magic and chakra and combine the two energies together to make a destructive force of power and could rival that of the few powerful shinobi that could strike fear in the hearts of the many. Kurama laid his head on his paws and looked down at the boy's conscious body through said boy's eyes. You live for the fight. It excites the human and dragon part of you to become the strongest. That is why you are one of the few humans that I respect and hold my trust. As such, I find some of your traits positive. Some you say, the great-tailed beast whose is a malevolent force that is stated to create tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, and split a mountain range with a single tail. One who holds pure rage tells me I have some positive qualities. Naruto narrowed his eyes internally at the beast. Please tell me, what are the not-so-positive qualities that I have? Cause I can tell you that I am better shish around this place. The Dragonslayer snarled out. Kurama narrowed his eyes and gave a low growl in return, your temper for one. That vicious aggression that you have blinds you just as much as your pride does. That is something I despise, as I have seen it multiple times from the human that I despise the most. So if you don't want headaches for the rest of the month, I suggest you silence your temper, otherwise you will not have no sleep and you will suffer from severe exhaustion. The son of Aknologia was silent after those words and Kurama huffed from his nose. I could list many others, boy. Your stubborn attitude is almost as bad as Kushina's. Your ignorance and cockiness is too much like Minato's. Your pride is on the level of that of many Uchiha and that blasted lizard. The list can go on with both sides, Naruto. I'm just listing the major ones. I still don't see how the hell I am like you are more like them than you think, Naruto. No matter how much you hate them and how much I resent their existence. They are your biological parents. You are going to have traits from both of them no matter if you were raised by Aknologia. Naruto gave a low animalistic snarl. You are letting your anger of others blind you. In battle you are stable, but when accepting others you are unstable and you conflict with yourself because you fear to care, and you know why, boy. Naruto narrowed his eyes and growled as he grabbed the trunk of a tree. His hand shifting into a claw-like hand as it dug into the bark and tugged enough so as to lift the tree from the roots of the ground. Naruto in anger threw the tree across the forest, hearing the pressure it held as it flew, and within moments later the loud cracking sounds of the trees from afar. The blonde sighed to himself as he stroked his bangs back and closed his eyes and calmed down to relieve the buildup of stress in his mind. So what should I do then? Trust every human on sight and be gracious? He questioned sarcastically. It's not my call on to tell you what you should do, Naruto. I would rather have you chose your path instead of letting those around you set one for you and tell you where to go. The fox said, though I think that you need to understand yourself. The real you. You don't have to accept humanity and trust the ones that you accept. They can be your allies and your family, though that is your choice alone, Naruto. Naruto looked at the fox and sighed, nodding his head a little in some form of accepting the large chakra beast's words. The blonde closed his eyes before he looked up. No longer in the outside world, he stood within the area he called his mindscape, staring up at the red-furred canine and smirked. When did you become so calm and neutral? You're usually on the aggressive side of things. Even your chakra isn't as foul as it was before. It seems more calm than anything. Kurama looked at the blonde and smirked. I guess I had a good teacher, a person to talk to, and a good listener to actually make me feel at ease, I suppose. Who truly knows? The tailed beast said as he closed his eyes and let a low hum erupt in his throat. Insert music. Shingeki no Kyojin Attack on Titan. Naruto raised his brow before shrugging his mind, leaving the seal before entering reality once more. Though once he was coming to reality he could feel something wrong. Not with the trees or the sky, but the environment overall. There was no breeze flowing through land, nor the sound of birds chirping, the sound of drifting wind, or the crunching underneath the blonde's feet. It was as if sound had no longer existed and that time had stood still around Naruto, a feeling which brought the blonde on edge. Kurama. Naruto thought as he looked around the area. I know, I sensed at the same time as you did. Suddenly the color of the world died, the skies darkened and made the world around them a dull gray. Any birds that flew around the sky stopped in mid-air and soon began to fade out of existence along with everything else. Trees, rocks, clouds, fields, mountains. The world was soon becoming a dull gray around Naruto. The Dragonslayer looked around with caution as the dim world pulsed with magic, concentrating all around him. The blonde pulled out Bakuya's handle from its scabbard and felt the presence of an overwhelming power close by. This power, it's shaking the foundations of the world, Naruto muttered as he narrowed his eyes. This power is vast. It feels on par with Kokuo's chakra levels, Kurama thought as he narrowed his eyes. Naruto then raised his head as his eyes widened a little, sensing a presence behind him unexpectedly. He turned around and in front of his a light emanated, crimson in color and black at the center. He only realized soon that it wasn't a light, but an eye that stared at him with. The pupil of the eye focused around him before it turned cat-like and widened a little. I found you, son of the apocalypse. Son of the Dark Dragon King. Naruto narrowed his eye at the entity. I have waited over millennia and now my waiting is over. It said, the eye's voice hoarse, distorted and aged. Naruto smirked. Who the hell are you? He asked. The voice chuckled. It does not matter who I am, boy. I will collect you. I will consume you all, and I will take what is rightfully mine. The eye shone brightly as it exploded and a wave of energy passed over Naruto. Naruto closed his eyes and covered his face as the wave of energy busted past him. He grunted for only a second before he felt the wave dying down. The blonde stood still for a moment before moving his arms away from his face and opening his eyes. Once no longer feeling the presence, he put Bakuya back into its scabbard and opened his eyes before being slightly dumbfounded at what he saw. Within his sight he could describe what was once dim environment to be now a wasteland. A desert of black sand that held no life around it, surrounded by a mountain range that held active volcanoes that plumed ash. The dull texture of the land was still there, but the sky was no longer gray, but a dim night color of purple that held large floating rocks and pillars in the sky, a long large, pale red moon that glowed through the dark skies of whatever lands Naruto was placed in. Though what piqued Naruto's curiosity was what he saw next. Suspended in the dark violet expanse of this otherworldly sky was a floating castle. The castle looked dark, possibly a border of a darker shade of purple as it eclipsed under the moon. The mass had a crescent-shaped line to it, under that was what seemed like pillars that possibly helped it levitate into the air. The body of it was covered by dark clouds, but he could tell that he saw a statue of a dragon's head upon it, stone-like with featured designs to it. A crest on its head, a short, but wide mouth with a very thin snout. The mouth of the dragon was open and in which held serrated teeth that looked like knives. Naruto held a stoic face as he looked at the face and paused. That face had been familiar to him, but where? He knew of many dragons that made a historical impact on the world and could remember many of their names and face. This one had a face so familiar to him, but the name did not cross his mind, just like this place seemed to just came to be without his knowledge. Whatever brought me here knew of me being Agnologia's Dragonslayer, and I know for damn sure it isn't some mage. He thought as he looked at the face of the dragon. Whoever brought me here is going to give me some answers, so help their life. Naruto shrugged his body as he began to move, only to sense someone pass by him from a distance, hearing the sound of crunching sand from afar. He looked into the direction and narrowed his eyes. What was that? He thought before sensing rising power of magic. Futon. Rikuden. Naruto turned his head quickly at the voice and looked up to see a massive sphere of compressed coming down upon him. He launched himself to the side to avoid the attack as it caused an explosion afterwards. The blonde dragged his feet on the sand as though the attack pushed him back a bit. Once the sand stopped blowing and the pressure died down, Naruto looked at the impact zone and glared at the mid-large-sized crater on the ground. Kurama raised a non-existent eyebrow in curiosity. That sounded like a jutsu, except it was magic-based, but that's not likely for any mage in Earthland. Naruto looked up and noticed a shadowed figure looking down upon him, and he noticed a set of shining white eyes. Eyes which were very much similar to Agnologia's. No way. I do not appreciate others attacking me behind my back, so I returned the favor for you, though this time you will not run off. The voice of the person said with a cold tone of voice. Naruto slapped himself mentally as he died a little inside. No fucking way, he thought as he quickly heard Kurama laughing loudly inside him. The Dragon Slayer growled as his eyes shone in the dark sky and snarled. God damn it, Makarov, god damn it. Unknown location. A flash crimson appeared in the air and suddenly, Naruto's form fell through. The physically 20-year-old man snarled as he hovered in the air and glanced upwards in time to see the portal he had entered through had vanished just as quickly as it had appeared. Disgraceful. I cannot believe that I allowed myself to be caught by such a foolish trick. Naruto growled. He then gripped his skull slightly as his eyes flickered to blue. What do you want, human half? You are not fit for being here, dragon. Though we are both intellectuals, you are aware of the fact that I am your superior in the mental field. Give me control of our body and I won't make this hard for either of us. Who are you to command a dragon? Shut up. Naruto gripped his skull once more and his skull burned as if it were on fire. His shining white eyes died down to being their original sapphire blue. Naruto panted as he shook his head to rid it of the splitting headache he had gotten. This is getting ridiculous. I have to find a way to end this mental battle for dominance soon enough, but first, I need to figure out where I am. He looked around to find himself in an area that was extremely bizarre. His field of vision was greeted with a rather dimly lit wasteland of an area. The area consisted of a desert of black sand. Sand dunes towered over him, and as he continued to look around, his enhanced vision caught the sight of many stranger forms. Volcanoes, geological formations which were completely uncharacteristic of a desert, leaked lava down their slopes as dark ash clouds escaped through their vents. The dulled texture of the land was still there, but the sky was no longer a light gray, but a dim night color of purple that held large floating rocks and pillars in the sky alongside a large, pale red moon that glowed through the dark skies and cast a glow upon the black sands that made it seem as if they were coated in blood. Suddenly, Naruto's ears twitched as he caught wind of a sound in the distance. A magic energy signature met his senses and his eyes flickered white once more as his rage let slip his Dragonslayer personality a bit. He leapt into the air and took off at a high speed through the air. "I found you, you coward!" Naruto growled as descended quickly, his magic energy accumulating in his hands as he did so. A gray-green magic seal formed in his hands and the wind swirled to life, compressing itself into a tight sphere. "Futon! Rikuden!" Naruto roared as he unleashed his attack. The orb of wind rocketed through the red-tinted lands and impacted with the black sands. He saw the figure he had aimed to strike avoid his strike and he landed harshly on the black sands. "I do not appreciate others attacking me behind my back, so I returned the favor for you, though this time you will not run off," he growled, his white eyes shining brightly. Naruto stared at the shorter being before him and bared his canines, his magic spiking with his increasing rage. "You will not escape my wrath, you insect. One does not simply trifle with the son of Acknowledgea without having their blood spilled. Well, isn't this just damn peachy? I'm sucked into a different dimension following through with some deranged imbecile who looks like me and has the decency to call me a coward and attack me blindly. What a damn hypocrite," Uzumaki snarled as he looked at the floating figure and gave a low snarl. He was taller than him by a few inches, but they seemed to have the same body structure. What hit him the most was the man's eyes, that he blonde had to admit, despite not being able to see his opponent's face. Those eyes brought forth such intensity and animal instinct that it made Uzumaki feel like he was in the presence of someone equal to him. Despite his slight rush of anger, Naruto could feel a sense of familiarity from the figure. His magic structure felt just like his own, more potent magic-wise, but not as dense due to the integration of chakra within Uzumaki's magic. However, this man still had large amounts of magic than any opponent the Jinchuriki has faced thus far, and that was what piqued the blonde's interest in his inner instinct to fight. "Something is not right here. It should be unlikely that this being in front of you is you," Kurama said. "You can't tell, but his magic, just from hearing it and sensing it, sounds and feels a lot like a jutsu. It's not a powerful one since it is not raw chakra energy or chakra at all, but feeling it I can tell it's close to the level of it. Naruto, don't fight first unless necessary." "Sorry Kurama, but the guy struck me from behind and I do not like fools that want to die come at me like cowards." Uzumaki shifted into a stance and flexed his muscles. "I'll force him to talk after I rip out a lung from his chest." The Jinchuriki thought maliciously, taking a few steps forward as he felt the sensation of magic come from the man above. Soon the shorter blonde could feel it coming, the attack of a drilling wind bullet coming at him like a speeding bullet. The blonde could see the magical essence like it was as clear as day and moved just a quick step, barely noticeable to his opponent as he avoided the attack and a burst of sand exploded right next to him. He kept his eyes on his opponent who shot out several more drilling bullets upon him, and in doing so, Uzumaki danced around as the attacks missed him, skidding from side to side gracefully like the wind and quickly following with several backflips before pushed up with his hands to fly into the air. The blonde's ears flicked up as he looked to see a much larger air bullet coming toward him, one in about 10 meters in diameter. "It's not bad, but," Naruto raised his hand, holding it, and with a loud roar he pushed the attack pack with a pulse of chakra, dispersing the attack with ease. When the attack died out, Naruto looked with slight wide eyes that his enemy was just meters within his range. He used the attack as a diversion. The pale eyes of Namikaze came close. The oncoming fist came within mere inches from his torso. Uzumaki quickly ducked beneath the punch only to receive a fierce kick to the stomach. He skidded backwards before seeing his opponent step towards him, vanishing in a burst of speed. The Jinchuriki growled at his opponent before doing the same. Several shockwaves appeared throughout the desert area before they reappeared in the center of their storm of collisions. Both blondes has their fists reared back before shooting them forth. The Jinchuriki and the Dragonslayer had their fists meet each other with terrific force, causing a thunderous sound to travel through the sky. Uzumaki grunted in slight discomfort as he felt his knuckles pop a little from the impact. A pressure of air came towards Uzumaki's head as the foot of the pale-eyed entity that was Namikaze aimed directly at the blonde's jaw. Uzumaki felt his jaw slack a bit, but it didn't stall him, nor did the impact distract him from continuing his fight. He grabbed the ankle of his attacker, spinning him around as he threw him across the sands. Cold slit blue eyes stared at Namikaze as he flipped in his footing, skidding along the sands before coming to a stop. The shorter blonde rubbed his jaw a little and spat out a wad of saliva that nearly dribbled out of his mouth. "He has a hard punch. His bones are dense, Possibly takes in a large amount of calcium and iron to strengthen the durability of his bones to balance out the strength he has with some sort of bodily defense. That's impressive. The Dark Dragon Slayer thought as he smirked. Uzumaki flexed his hand, closing it and reopening it once more as his fingers sharpened into serrated knife-like claws made out of wind. However, he is going to have to up the fight if he hopes to survive against me. Within a burst of speed, Uzumaki launched himself toward the opposing figure, coming down on his opponent with a heavy fist created by wind only to hit the ground. Debris was covering him from the view of his opponent, but he was also blindsided. His ears twitched by every droplet of dirt and rock that came upon the ground, and within only a few short minutes he was able to sense the shift of air pressure to raise his entire body off the ground and spin horizontal to his side as Namikaze came down, driving his knee into the earth. Uzumaki looked at Namikaze with annoyance before he launched himself from the air he was still floating on and rammed into his taller self with speed, dragging him onto the earth before coming onto a halt with him on top. Blue eyes stared at glowing ones and narrowed at them before punching one of the eyes. A hiss of pain exited Namikaze's lips. "Quit copying me, you annoying bastard," Uzumaki roared as he drove a straight punch directly into the man's jaw and then another punch to his cheek. The barrage came to a halt as a fist drove into Uzumaki's sternum, sending him back into the air, and the blonde remained in the air, holding his sternum for a moment. The strength on him is immense. It's easily just as strong as Gildart's power, if not greater. I hate to admit it, but he's good. Hatchlings like you should learn when to be silent, Namikaze said as the wind picked up around him as he too rose up into the sky. Wind swirled around his hands before a pair of magic seals appeared on either arm, and wind blades immediately coated the older blonde's arms. Otherwise they'll just be dust in the wind. The jinchuriki's eyes closed, snapping back open to show a fierce rage within them. The air that was non-existent had now released a breeze that soon released something against the fellow blonde. What Uzumaki felt inside him he did not know. He could feel it calling his inner nature to fight. You should look in the mirror if you're calling yourself a hatchling. You should not be so cocky that you should refer to me as a mere newborn, the shorter blonde said as he got a growl in return. Uzumaki held his fists firmly in front of him as he put a stance up identical to Wing Chun. His body was calm and remained casual in the air, only waiting for the opportune moment for his opponent to come at him with strength that had exceeded his own. Thus is where the fight had truly begun to arise. Naruto Namikaze picked up speed as he rushed toward his counterpart. He quickly launched himself with an assault of slashes coming to aim directly at the younger male's sternum, only to have his arms slapped away by the other blonde's graceful hands that move like feathers in the wind. The man known as the Ogono Fujin narrowed his glowing eyes as he grazed the shoulder of the smaller figure that moved his body part away from his attack. "Futon. Kazujiri," Namikaze's counterpart snarled before leaping back when he sent a pair of crescent-shaped air blades at his opponent. Uzumaki used the space he gained from leaping back to easily avoid them, but then Namikaze appeared in front of Uzumaki, wind swirling around his leg with the force of a cyclone. "Futon. Senpu Kyaku," Uzumaki crossed his arms in front of his body and blocked the kick, but the kick was extremely powerful. Uzumaki grunted as his arm bones creaked from the strain before he was forced back from the blow. Resisting the directional force, he came to a stop, and Uzumaki then saw Namikaze come in for a quick strike to the chest. Uzumaki immediately reacted and went to counter with his hand, grabbing Namikaze's wrist and following up with two rising kicks to the blonde's nose and chin. Through the force of the blows, the taller blonde escaped, rubbing his nose and snorted what little bit of blood that had pooled in his nasal caverns. Namikaze glared, looking back at the other blonde with a cold look that would cause any lesser man to shit themselves. The taller blonde charged into the air, coming at the other with a series of blows that had come to be blocked once more. Though through what was cockiness before, there was a more focused, yet aggressive attitude to the fight. A roundhouse kick by the shorter blonder was blocked only to have been countered by a strong punch to the chest. However, Uzumaki shrugged the move off after a second and returned afterward, countering and striking his other self in the stomach with an elbow. The wind left Namikaze's from the strike before a palm strike to the chin snapped his head upwards. He quickly snapped his head back down and grabbed the younger blonde's wrist and stopped the follow-up palm strike cold. With a snarl, Namikaze had his fist reared back and smashed it down upon his parallel form's body. Time seemed to slow down as the force of the registered with Uzumaki's body, and Namikaze had let go in tandem with his strike, leading to Uzumaki spiraling towards the sands. A relatively large pillar of sand formed from Uzumaki's collision with the sands below. The younger blonde wiped the blood from his burst lip, allowing Kurama to heal the burst lip he had gotten. Futon. Furyuden. A giant wind spiraled towards Uzumaki, but Uzumaki's eyes flashed crimson as he took on a bit of his inner Biju's strength and released a Yukai-augmented roar. The sonic pulse tore apart the reptile of swirling air currents, and Namikaze was nowhere to be found in the air. A gust of wind blew past Uzumaki and he turned, his eyes widening when he saw no one. However, his eyes widened when he saw Namikaze standing with his arm outstretched, a purple magic seal spinning slowly in his hands. Seal magic. Amaterasu formula number 25. 4 bolts magic sparked from each quarter of the magic seal and rapidly collected into a powerful spheroid of energy before launching itself forward as a beam. Uzumaki snarled and used the flash of light the beam generated to mask his ability to eat the magic energy that the blast was composed of. Namikaze growled when he saw his attack had been nullified and began to fire more energy blasts from his seal formula. Uzumaki jumped, flipped and twisted to avoid the blasts, discreetly feasting on some. Seal magic. Amaterasu formula number 26. Bolts of energy flew through the air, but when Uzumaki went to dodge, Namikaze's attack suddenly diverted from their path and followed him. Uzumaki's eyes widened and the jinchuriki released a cry of pain as the energies coursed through his body. A small explosion erupted from the blasts that followed afterwards. The sand cloud that formed suddenly dispersed to reveal Uzumaki standing tall, but he was breathing heavily. Namikaze watched in interest as he saw Uzumaki's body now having a pair of leathery wings sprouting from his back. The wings of the dragon he trained folded back into his body as if they were never there. Namikaze's blue eyes narrowed and he growled before he went forth for another close combat battle, Uzumaki thinking along the same lines as he too charged forth. The two received, returned, and countered blows with each other. Uzumaki coming with a series of lightning-fast kicks to Namikaze's head and legs in order to disorient and or throw his opponent off balance while attacking with fists the chest as a way to incapacitate, yet Namikaze followed through with heavy blows to the skull, diaphragm and ribs in order to effectively break down Uzumaki's body while also entriande's fast-moving limbs by aiming for the joints to reduce the chances of counter and simultaneously disable said limbs. The air was filled with pressure created by the powers exerted by the two combatants and the ground shook from the clash of blows from above and the power of the two continuing to rise as the hand-to-hand combat became more intense. The blondes both had light bruising and marks, blood trailing down Uzumaki's head and lined his face as it dripped down his chin, while blood down the nose and mouth of Namikaze's. They both crashed into each other with reverse roundhouse kicks clashing against one another. The legs moved away and a large fist came from the taller blonde aiming at the jinchuriki only for the fist to be grabbed by the wrist and the arm to be twisted. Naruto Namikaze growled and with brute force pushed the opposing blonde back to untwist his arm. It was then the two attacked each other at once and immediately placed their right legs behind their left legs. They leaned back as they raised their rear legs and rocketed them forth. In a simultaneous use of the identical Sparta kicks, the two blondes rammed their respective heels into their opposing sternums. The two Dragonslayers crashed into the ground, causing two craters of impact to form amongst the black sand in which they had landed in. Insert music. Gurgwamesh evolution. The ground exploded and quickly the two Dragonslayers came toward each other with a battle cry as they charged each other with blades in hand. Namikaze gripped his twin blades, Ascalon and Excalibur, the two legendary swords of the once great kingdom of Camelot, and Uzumaki holding Bakuya, the black crescent saber-like katana forged by the scales of his own father. The three blades clashed into one another, Ascalon and Excalibur in a cross position as the swords held their ground against the blade that was forged by concentrated energy. Namikaze looked at Uzumaki and narrowed his eyes. "You have some skill." He slowly pushed the blonde jinchuriki back. "Though you're 100 years too early to face me," he said as his swords gathered energy around them. "You don't say, huh?" The energy blade soon began to manifest a dark aura of power around it as it gave a low roar. "Experience and strength is one thing, but never underestimate me, you prideful son of a bitch. Otherwise I'll cut your ass in 16 different ways," Uzumaki said. "I'd like to see you try, weakling." Soon the energy of all three swords were becoming unstable, leading to a small explosion which pushed the two back. By the time the smoke was cleared, Namikaze was gone from the frontal view of his fellow identical self. Uzumaki paused as he looked around the area with caution. Not a single sound had echoed through the area, not a step in the world. The blonde was here. Sensing his magical presence was not hard for the jinchuriki to know, but to be this silent kicked the male's instincts into action. Just in that second, when natural instinct came, he could feel Namikaze. He ducked his head, the trail of golden flames from Excalibur's horizontal slash that aimed to decapitate him forming above him. Uzumaki sweated lightly from the intense heat of the blade of Merlin and shifted his body to the side immediately to avoid the downward diagonal strike from its silver twin. A small burst of fire sent Uzumaki skidding backwards and he watched with mild fascination as the black sands had turned to glass from the intense heat of Ascalon's flames. Uzumaki blinked and suddenly Namikaze was gone again. Suddenly, a cloud of pure magic energy coated the air around him, expanding outwards to cover a large area while also blinding him. Assassination sword art, silent killing based. He means business. Uzumaki turned his head toward when he sensed the older blonde's magic signature, but Namikaze vanished just as quickly as Uzumaki had turned. "He's really good, damn, I really hate the old man now." Naruto searched around the area. He bent down and placed his hand on the sand. Magic and chakra pulsed around the ground like a sonar radar, looking for the otherworldly Naruto. "Where are you?" Naruto thought as his eyes averted left and right. Neither in front or behind, nor around the sides. "Above you." Kurama's cry of alarm immediately made his jinchuriki glance up. Uzumaki's eyes widened as he looked to see his doppelganger above him and thought he hadn't sensed him before. He could surely sense him now that he was fast approaching his location. The rising magical pressure gathered from above. The larger blonde come down. The flame around Excalibur and Ascalon extended into what appeared to be a gargantuan blade of gold and silver that had begun to shine brighter and brighter until it turned to a bright mixture of both. Hijin no Ken. The flames of Excalibur and Ascalon extended forward as it prepared to cut through and incinerate Naruto Uzumaki from the entire existence of the world. The bright flames exploded out as he shone as brightly as the sun. Once it had died down, there were scorch marks that were darker than the black sand itself and outlined the large field of glass that had formed from the impact of the flames hot enough to burn Dragon's entrails. Gold and silver flames traveled in certain spots where the sword was directed at, and the line in which the sand was inflamed hardened into what would be a black sheet of glass longer than a football field. Floating in the air were two sheets of cloth in patches of black and blue, slowly being smoldered by flames and quickly consumed before the fire died out and all that remained was ash. Naruto Namikaze smirked as he saw the ash pile from the clothes sprinkle into the sand. "Trash will always be trash, pathetic human hatchling," he said in a cold manner as he closed his eyes. "Is that what you think?" a voice behind him said in a dead tone. The eyes of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer opened up in slight surprise and he reacted, bringing up the golden blade of Merlin to stop the blackened blade of energy from decapitating him. He turned his head to feel the dark energy of Uzumaki's blade touch the skin of his neck, a thin line of blood trailing down it as the sharp energy blade cut into it lightly. Blown white eyes stared into cold, empty cat-like eyes as the other Naruto looked up slightly at the older one with a bored look. Both arms stood steady, but it was obvious to see that both blondes had their arms tensed as one tried to cut into the other's flesh while the other tried to prevent that situation from happening. "I told you not to underestimate me." "How? The one thing you lack in this fight, and that is speed. You may be stronger than me physically, but I'm faster than you," said Jinchuriki. Looked at his arm, his short-sleeved jacket now sleeveless and his arm which had black singe marks on them showing some burns and which were already being healed. "Your attack only caught me by surprise on how much power you put into it." The Namikaze smirked as he gripped the hilt firmly on Ascalon. "Faster than me?" Namikaze scoffed. The magic of his sword ignited and he swung the silver blade full force. "You only wish," he said as he attempted to cut through the child of the dark dragon cane. The blonde's swing caused a gust of wind to pick up and a wave of black sand rose up before it slowly stopped. His attack had blew sand and rock away. It would have possibly cut air itself, but the attack had only cut through an apparition of the doppelganger. Namikaze growled as he ducked beneath Uzumaki's decapitating slice before rotating to stab Ascalon into his opponent's belly. Bringing down the blade of dark energy, Uzumaki blocked the stab, but the burst of silver flame that erupted from the blade of Merlin's tip managed to send Uzumaki back. Namikaze roared as he hurled both his blades at Uzumaki, and the younger blonde watched with a curious expression at the rather unorthodox move, easily sidestepping the two strikes. Pillars of gold and silver burned brightly as Uzumaki saw Namikaze vanish into the wind. Suddenly a spike of above him and Uzumaki watched in pure shock as he saw Namikaze above him. The image above him made him and his inner Biju freeze at the resemblance. His cloak billowed in the wind, spiky blonde hair and sapphire eyes that reminded him far too much of his biological father, and clutched in his hand a sphere of swirling magic energy that glowed brightly before it was thrust downward. Energy make. Rasengan. Uzumaki released a howl of pain as the attack crashed into his back, tearing at his skin and shredding muscle fibers beneath it. The sands blew apart in a small crater and Namikaze stood above his downed opponent, hands raised high. Excalibur and Ascalon rattled within the circles of obsidian-colored glass they had created before flying back into their wielders' hands. Uzumaki quickly rolled to the side as both blades of Merlin were stabbed into the sands where his downed body had previously laid before inhaling deeply. Fujin no Dio Ugo. The powerful blast of wind crashed into Namikaze's body with terrific force and sent him soaring back. Uzumaki hissed as he looked at his back and watched as blood and burnt tissue fell from his wound. Kurama immediately set to work on healing the wound, steaming rising as the healing took place, but a wound caused by the Rasengan was not going to be easy to heal. That was the Rasengan. Kurama finished his Jinchuriki's thought. This is extremely odd. Not only does he bear magical techniques similar to the jutsus of the elemental nations, but he also seems to be capable of manipulating the pure Eternano within his system and used it to create an exact magic-based form of Minato's technique. Indeed, it is, but if it is made of magic. Naruto licked his lips. I can eat it. Namikaze rose up from the black sands and hurled Excalibur at his opponent. Quickly ducking beneath the blade, Uzumaki raised his hands and clapped them together. Fujin no Kamaitachi. The large scythe blade of wind rocketed forth towards the older blonde, and namikaze merely sliced the wind blade apart with Ascalon. He then raised his arm, and Uzumaki made a quick decision to avoid Excalibur's form. Once the golden blade returned to Namikaze's hand, however, the white-eyed Naruto began to glance around as a sonic boom formed from his blue-eyed counterpart's location. His ears twitched and the two swords crossed over one another as they blocked Bakuya's black blade. However, as soon as Uzumaki had made contact with the blades of Merlin, another sonic boom followed as Uzumaki disappeared from view. What the fu? He never finished as he was suddenly slashed along his left arm, Ascalon falling from his hand. He reached for the blade, but the pain from his bleeding arm, along with the fact that Ascalon was suddenly kicked away by Uzumaki, hindered his ability to do so. Uzumaki then reached forth with a clawed hand to pull Namikaze towards him. But Namikaze leaned back quickly, but the shorter blonde managed to grip onto the edge of his face mask. The mask's fabric stretched beyond its limits and it was torn from his face. Uzumaki vanished in a sonic boom, the remnants of Namikaze's face mask fluttering through the breeze generated before collapsing onto the sand. Namikaze glanced around for the shorter Dragonslayer. He was then slashed along his right elbow and Excalibur was lost to him as well. With both blades gone from his grasp, Uzumaki struck and sliced through the tendons in Namikaze's knees and the white-eyed Dragonslayer fell to his knees. Graah! Namikaze roared and unleashed a burst of magic and wind from his body, but it did no good as Uzumaki inhaled the energy and wind. Fujin no Kirikiri Mai. A numerous amount of wind blades sliced through the black sands and sliced into Namikaze's flesh and sent him rolling along the sands. Uzumaki then appeared above his opponent, blade poised downwards to impale. Namikaze quickly slammed his palm on the ground and a violet magic seal burst into existence. Seal Magic. Amaterasu Formula Number 10. A purple magic seal formed in a dome-shaped barrier formed around Namikaze. Uzumaki snarled when his blade created sparks of energy from the friction between his blade and the barrier. With a roar, Uzumaki attacked and began to bash at the barrier with his blade, wind blasts and claws. The barrier held strong, but with the relentless onslaught, it would take only a minute before the barrier fell. A small crack forming on the magic-powered barrier emphasized that point. The older blonde then felt the magic flow through his body as he directed his healing factor's powers to his severed tendons. Steam and a crimson light formed from the area that was being healed. The boy's speed is impressive. The dragon personality thought as Namikaze's blue eyes glared at the young Jinchuriki. Indeed, dragon. The human half responded as one of the sapphire eyes became a shining white. His speed is indeed greater than our own. Even when we used Shunpo no Kazejin, he manages to find a way to keep pace with us. But we are stronger. The dragon roared blue eye then began to vanish from view and shining white completely filled the void and glowed with ferocious power. Insert music. 2 Steps from Hell Sons of War extended version. With a roar, Uzumaki punched the area he saw that had cracked. Fujin no Senpu Ken. A cyclone swirled around the young man's arm, reaching to his fist before it impacted strongly with the barrier. The crack expanded before Uzumaki stabbed Bakuya forth, slicing through the barrier and shattering it. Namikaze quickly diverted his head and watched as Bakuya, the black blade of energy, embedded itself into the sands near him. Sensing the energy coming from the blade, Uzumaki watched in awe as Namikaze opened his jaws and with amazing strength, broke the blade with his teeth and feasted upon the energy of the blade. Uzumaki's eyes widened as he saw his blade of energy was taken apart by the vicious pair of teeth. Namikaze used his opponent's shock to his advantage and rose up to one knee and pushed forth, the momentum carrying his clawed hand forth and stabbed it forth into his opponent's stomach. Uzumaki coughed up a glob of blood from the impact and 5 small holes formed from where Namikaze had impaled him, the pain and the force of the attack forcing him to let go of Bakuya. The blade's hilt was then kicked away much like Namikaze's blades were, and with his opponent disarmed, this fight would become much more interesting. Namikaze reached forth and removed his slightly airborne doppelganger, gripping his claws around his face and slammed the shorter blonde into the sands. A cloud of ebony rose up before Namikaze raised Uzumaki once more and slammed him down into the sands again. 3 more ground slams had satisfied the white-eyed Dragonslayer before Uzumaki was hit with a powerful blow that struck him in the stomach. The fact that it was coated in black and blue magic energy did little to reduce the pain that Uzumaki felt. Time slowed for Uzumaki as he felt the fist embed itself in his stomach before he flew back. A trench carved itself in the black sands before he crashed harshly into a sand dune. Uzumaki spat out the blood that pooled in his mouth before he looked up at his opponent. "Prepared to die, hatchling," Namikaze growled. Uzumaki's eyes widened and vanished into a blur of speed and looked with wide eyes as he saw his opponent now standing where he once was, a crater where his fist had impacted with the sands. Uzumaki growled before some his wings. The black dragon wings flapped heavily and took Uzumaki into the skies. Uzumaki growled and took notice of the energy boost and physical enhancements his opponent took on. If his opponent got stronger, it was best he do the same. Uzumaki closed his eyes and an aura of black, blue and crimson surrounded his body. His eyes then snapped open and blue irises became a deep violet and they seemed to shine as a pale white glow emanated from Uzumaki's eyes. His teeth and nails became noticeably longer and his whisker marks became much darker and triangular IAME wilder and the chakra and magic that flowed through his body became a powerful aura that outlined his body. His power compacted and flickered as it prepared to burst forth. Namikaze snarled as he glanced up at his opponent and an aura of black and blue surrounded his body. His eyes shone with a brighter white light. He became more carnivorous looking as his nails and teeth became claws and fangs. His hair became much wilder like his counterparts and the power he expelled immense, easily matching the malicious intent that leaked from Uzumaki's body. Die! Was the simultaneous cry from both Dragonslayers of Agnologia. The sons of the apocalypse sped towards each other. Uzumaki's power burst forth and a pulse of red yukai and black and blue magic formed along with the sonic boom that embodied the speed at which he descended towards his opponent. Namikaze's power did the same as a 20-kilometer crater created by the magic he expelled to take flight expanded from the point where he previously stood. Time slowed as the two neared each other. It took less than a second for both combatants to close the distance between them, but to them it felt like hours. Their powerful bodies neared each other and then they impacted. The force of their collision was literally catastrophic. The earth shook beneath them and the sky itself seemed to quake. Chakra and magic exploded out from the point of impact. The two then began to soar through the skies as they chased after one another. Multiple sonic booms and pulses of magic and chakra burst forth from every fist, foot and headbutt that collided. Namikaze coated his arm in blue and black magic and Uzumaki did the same, only his had the reddish hue of Kurama's chakra laced within it. The two claw-based moves crashed against one another and the two snarled before the unstable mixture of energies exploded outwards in a dome of chakra and magic that expanded to about half the size of Magnolia Town. Namikaze and Uzumaki halted their movements as they hovered in the air, glaring at one another. Dark violet met shining white. His magic energy. It's similar to Agnologia's, both Naruto's thought. You're sent. You are a dragon's child as well, Uzumaki stated. That I am. Your magical power though, it bears the feeling of my draconian parents. How are you a child of Agnologia? How? I didn't. Your answer merely confirmed it and judging by your calculating look, it's obvious you've figured out that I am also a Dragonslayer of Agnologia. However, the question is raised as to who is mightier. I wish to test that as well. Come, copycat. Do not mock me, hatchling. Lest it be the last words you utter before I tear your throat out. Both Narutos roared and released simultaneous pulses of magic from their maws. However, with Kurama's chakra ajmaning Uzumaki's, the shorter blonde won the contest of colliding forces and the crimson outlined magic pulse continued on its path towards its target. Namikaze's eyes widened before he was struck by the pulse. This energy, it doesn't feel like magic. It's much more dense, more concentrated and malicious in nature. Namikaze halted his motion and his hands reached out as he reacted, his fingers interlocking with Uzumaki's own when the dual palm strike aimed for his chest was caught. Namikaze and Uzumaki held onto each other, trying to push one another back. You're no mage. That energy is not magic. What is it? He asked. Uzumaki smirked. Power, was the simple reply. Uzumaki then let out a cry as he lashed out with a kick. The toe of Uzumaki's boot met Namikaze's chin and snapped his head back and his grip loosened. Another upward kick followed afterwards sending Namikaze much higher before Uzumaki grabbed his adversary by the heel and threw him down. Namikaze tried to slow his descent by calling upon his ability to fly, but the acceleration of his fall was too much to overcome. He then coated his arms with wind and magic and sent 3 blades of magic and wind at his opponent. Uzumaki avoided all 3 before a sonic boom sounded. Namikaze fired another round of wind blades laced with Dragonslayer magic. But Uzumaki avoided all with ease as his wings granted him better aerial maneuverability. He then extended his fist forth when he reached his opponent. The sound of bones creaking met his ears and Namikaze was forced to ground zero with explosive force. A tower of sand and dust was kicked up and Uzumaki dove into it, but he was pushed back as a tornado sprung forth. Futon. Taistumaki. The tornado spun rapidly and struck against Uzumaki and trapped him in the vortex. The wind sliced at his skin and left numerous small cuts. Feudal. With a roar, Uzumaki released a pulse of yukai and the tornado burst apart. However, Namikaze took the time to appear in front of his opponent and his arm was glowing with magic energy before it lashed out and struck Uzumaki in the stomach. Uzumaki rocketed to the ground before Namikaze sped after him and lashed onto his face, dragging him through the sands and carving a trench in the desert. As he was being held down, Uzumaki received numerous punches to the chest. but quickly freed himself as he used his wings to divert their path and took to the skies once more before descending in such a way that namikaze hit the sandy ground first. 2 powerful punches dislocated namikaze's jaw, but he quickly diverted his head to avoid the third and fourth. Graah! A magic pulse from the white-eyed Dragonslayer impacted with Uzumaki. Namikaze rose up and cracked his jaw back into place before he was kicked in the chest by a powerful magic-encased kick. Namikaze grunted as from the kick and a powerful wind was generated from its force. 2 punches slammed into his stomach and he skidded backwards as Uzumaki flew after his friction-making form. Numerous blows rained down on the older Dragonslayer as he crossed his arms to block whatever blow he could. Uzumaki then flapped his wings and sent a wave of crimson chakra at his opponent. The chakra burned at Namikaze's body and suddenly an arc of demon chakra-enhanced wind collided with his body, breaking through his guard and impacting with him. Namikaze stumbled from the blow and Uzumaki took his chance. A sonic boom formed behind him from the speed at which he took off. With a roar, Uzumaki brought down his forearm with terrifying force and the blow collided with his older doppelganger's body with enough force to raise a dust cloud. The sand swirled wildly and Uzumaki panted as he held his forearm in place. However, his violet eyes widened when he saw Namikaze standing on bended knee so that he could get beneath the strike. The younger blonde's forearm was resting in the palm of Namikaze's hand and was quickly caught in his tight, clawed grip. Said claws dug into his skin and drew blood very easily. Your speed enhances your strength. I applaud that. Namikaze's white eyes glanced upwards at the violet-eyed Uzumaki as he began to flap his wings to gain the speed needed to easily wrench his arm free. But Namikaze would have none of that. A swift kick sent Uzumaki into a temporary paralysis as his diaphragm was struck. Energy make. Rasengan. The energy sphere sent Uzumaki spiraling through the air at high speeds before he lost the momentum to keep airborne and was now rolling through the sands. He quickly dug his wings and his claws into the sands before coming to a stop. Uzumaki snarled as he rose back to his feet and Namikaze ushered forth a rage within Uzumaki when he gave him a "come hither" motion with his hand. The younger Naruto was more than happy to oblige. Speeding forth, Uzumaki aimed a claw swipe at Namikaze's throat, but Namikaze ducked before aiming an uppercut that struck Uzumaki in the chest. The shorter of the 2 blondes powered through the strike and slammed an elbow down upon his enemy's skull before clasping his hands above his head and bringing it down in a hammer blow. Namikaze fell to one knee, but quickly rotated his body and struck his opponent's knee. The leg twisted to the side from the force before he tui. The 2 Narutos snarled and reared their heads back and slammed their foreheads against one another with devastating force. They clutched their bleeding foreheads, but Namikaze, being the more battle-hardened of the 2, recovered quicker and punched Uzumaki in the face before slicing at his opponent's face, carving 5 slash marks along the side of it. Uzumaki hissed, but that hiss became a gasp as a knee was brought up into his stomach, causing him to release blood and spittle from his mouth. A punch met his chest, followed by a second punch to the face. An upward sweep kick landed against his chin, followed by another kick. Uzumaki seemed to hover in the air from the kick he was dealt, but before he could react, Namikaze was already upon him, hands clasped above his head. Magic swirled to life in his hands before he slammed them down on Uzumaki's body. A large explosion of magic energy burst forth from the impact it made with Uzumaki's skull and the boy was sent rocketing to the ground and carved a trench in the ebony sands before he caused a sand dune to collapse atop of him from when he collided with it. Namikaze growled as he landed on the ground. Now to finish this once and for all. Namikaze got into a horse stance and reared his head back as magic energy swirled into his open jaws. Uzumaki groaned as he rose to his feet and saw his counterpart charging magic energy into his jaws. Hurry! Use yours, Kurama urged him. Uzumaki complied with the Biju's words and he opened his jaws and swirls of darkness and magic energy entered his mouth as it was drawn in from the atmosphere. Both Narutos now had large spheres of energy hovering above their jaws before they ate them. Their bodies swelled to unbelievable sizes, as if they were about to burst. Steam and magic energy leaked from their mouths before they leaned their heads back and unleashed their attacks. Mokashiryu no Hoko. Miryu no Hoko. 2 titanic blasts of energy sped across the black desert, the sands turning into black glass from the heat that the beams of energy released. The glass was then shattered apart as both beams collided with one another. The land shook as if an earthquake had hit and both attacks began to fight for dominance, pushing each other back and forth. Though Uzumaki's Yukai-enhanced blast was more dense and struck harder, Namikaze was easily able to match it due to his many years of honing his Dragonslayer abilities and the fact that he possessed more than enough magic to keep his attack from being overwhelmed by the chakra-enhanced magic attack. The battle for supremacy then came to an end as the energies burst apart in a gargantuan dome of energy. The dome expanded outwards until it was about the size of Magnolia Town itself. The ground beneath them was torn asunder by the effects of the blast and the land shook with an even greater magnitude. The light generated by the blast and large amounts of sand that had been kicked up died away.
Both dragon slayers of Acknowledgia stood with their clothes torn, covered in slashes and bore a few burn marks. Their eyes stared into one another and they took a few intentionally slow steps towards each other. A pair of sonic booms echoed through the air and the two Narutos were already in front of each other.
Namikaze held an orb of swirling blue magic energy about the size of a basketball while Uzumaki clutched an equally large spheroid of chakra and magic, its color being a deep reddish violet instead of the trademark blue. Energy Make. Odama Rasengan. Ninpou. Kyuubi Rasengan. The two attacks were about to collide, but the collision was prevented when their wrists were gripped and they were spun around before being tossed away in the same direction. Another explosion of energy left a massive hole in the sands where their Rasengan attacks struck and Namikaze and Uzumaki shook their heads to get rid of the dizziness from when they were spun around. They turned and glared in the direction from which their original point of collision would have been. Now boys. I can't have you two killing each other when you've only just got here. A dark shadow stood, its piercing red eyes staring into them. Who are you to interrupt our battle? Uzumaki growled. Namikaze stood with a calculating look on his face before his white eyes died down to their original blue. But they still held the same level of ferocity as when it was a shining white. You're the one who brought us here, aren't you? Ding ding ding. Give the boy a prize, Namikaze snarled as he was being mocked, the shadow's clapping hands suddenly being severed by slicing winds. However, the shadow was quick to grow a new pair. Correct though, Dragon Slayer of the Apocalypse. I am the one who brought you both here in. Spare me the dramatics. Who are you? Namikaze asked, though it was more of a demand to know. Who am I? The figure then began to laugh before its crimson orbs looked both Narutos over and then it split into two. Its form morphed and twisted before taking on very familiar images. Why am you of course? The shadow clones of Uzumaki and Namikaze smirked at the originals with wicked grins on their faces. No you are not. Embodiments of whatever is controlling you has willed you to fashion yourself into our images. Now answer the question properly or I will slice that shadow apart. Oh, my young Dragon Slayer, you think you have enough power to defeat me? You may have defeated that old fool, Baragon the Earth Dragon, but I am on a whole different level. I am a master of the night, the shadows and your dreams. I give you hope and I can give you fear for I am the Dragon of Nightmares. The pair of shadow clones spoke. Dragon of Impossible? Shadow Uzumaki grinned widely, so you figured it out? Acknowledgia said you were dead, Uzumaki exclaimed. The clone Uzumaki was about to speak when Namikaze spoke. There is no Dragon of Nightmares, hatchling. Namikaze interrupted. Acknowledgia informed me of every single type of dragon there is. I have heard of many dragons, but he never mentioned a nightmare dragon, not even with regards to Alagesia's history records that he told me through word of mouth. Ah, but my young dimensional captive, that is your universe. This one next to you is the one who comes from my world. If you wish to know more, come to the castle and we will discuss history together there. I await your arrival, Apocalypse Dragonslayer and Jinchuriki of the Apocalypse. The shadow of Namikaze spoke before both shadows swirled into nothingness. Uzumaki was quick to act and was about to follow, but he was grabbed on his shoulder. Uzumaki reacted to throw Namikaze over his shoulder, but the older blonde was prepared for that reaction and quickly kicked the younger blonde in the back of the knee before holding him in a master lock. Listen to me, boy. You seem to know something about this Dragon of Nightmares. I would like you to explain who it is, everything you can tell me. Why should I tell you, asshole? Uzumaki's eyes flashed crimson, a feature that Namikaze mentally became curious about, but chose to ignore it for now. Look here boy, you may be a son of Acknowledgia as well, but I am not afraid of you. Your rage blinds you to the fact that we need a battle strategy. Well I know what I'm up against, but I don't. That thing said you slayed a dragon of a lower level than what it is currently at and judging by the fact that it was able to perform interdimensional matter transportation at a whim, I highly doubt you'd be able to take this thing down. Now tell me, WHO, is the Nightmare Dragon? Naruto, listen to him. Kurama, you were about to go into there without a plan. You may know of the Nightmare Dragon from your dragon father, but from what he said, the Nightmare Dragon took this version of yourself from another universe. An alternate one, and that means that the dragons and origins of the dragons may be different from the ones your Acknowledgia told you. Like it or not, you will need his help to take down a dragon who was ranked as one of the orig. Kurama sighed at the blonde's silence. Stupid, prideful shinobi spawn. You know I'm right. Uzumaki sighed before his crimson eyes became blue once more. Very well, I will tell you of the Nightmare Dragon. Now release me from this hold. Namikaze nodded his head, but as soon as Uzumaki was released, Namikaze made numerous hand motions and suddenly a seal array formed itself on Uzumaki's body and the chains of kanji snaked themselves around Uzumaki's limbs and neck. The hell? Seals? It seems this one is much more advanced than you in the field though, Kurama noted. I don't trust you and I know the feeling is mutual so you will understand my reasoning behind not releasing you, Namikaze explained. Uzumaki narrowed his eyes and contemplated on second thoughts on telling or not, but decided to do so and accepted the terms. I'll just have to take my time and study the markings on the seal. Kurama tried to remove the seal if possible. Give me 10 minutes, this seal is a little more different than regular seals from Fuinjutsu, but it holds the same concept. It is possibly second or a close second to acting like Mito's advanced restraining seals or your mother's chakra chains. That's nice and all, but that's not necessary to know right now. I need to get out unless he tries to pull a fast one on us. I don't think he is mentally all there. I can feel a psychological battle by just seeing his facial features. No, his mind is split and it's tearing, and that is one of the few things that can make a Dragon Slayer more dangerous than a sane one. Well, the best thing you could do is to just not get yourself killed. I have no means of dying and reforming within the next 5 or so years. So just give him what he wants while giving yourself some time. Uzumaki sighed as he sat down on the ground and looked up to the sky. Morpheus was a dragon housed within the world of the Dragon King's palace. His power, if I am correct, was manifestation of illusions, dreams, and mirage. Now it's a polar opposite. He bears nightmares with his increased power of illusion, and with that holds the power of manifesting things into reality. Fears, loved ones, etc. Naruto Uzumaki shifted his body in a comfortable position while he sat down. In order for me to truly start at the beginning, I will have to tell you about what is going on right now. Is that alright? As long as it proceeds to the direct information that I desire, that is fine, said Namikaze. Naruto grunted before he started. In my world, the dragons are in hiding. I have no doubt it is the same as yours, is it not? He got a nod from his counterpart. Well, that's good to know. From what I do know, there are over 300 dragons in my world currently, most in a deep hibernation from a war that was almost half a millennia ago in my world. Though there are few that are roaming about the world while avoiding humans' eyes. There is a place where there are a handful of dragons that reside in during a certain period of time before a festival begins. Ryuusei, otherwise known as the Dragon King's Festival, and the place they reside in is called Ryukyuden, the Dragon Palace. What does this have to do with anything? Namikaze said. It has to do with everything. Knowing what some of the things are in my world before knowing what is happening now is best to say before the important things. Naruto said, his eyes narrowed. Now let me finish. Uzumaki looked at the crimson-orange scenery and smirked. There are 12 dragons in the Dragon Palace. 2 are the Knights of White and Shadow, the elemental kings who rule over the dragons that branch from their element, the guardians of time and space, advisors of the Dragon King, and said that both are to rival him in strength and power. Sadly, I doubt that would be unlikely in some cases. Because of Tusan, I presume? Namikaze said. Yes, because Acnology of the Dragon of Apocalypse and the Dark Dragon King is the older twin brother to the Dragon King, Uzumaki said. Namikaze's eyes widened slightly at the revelation. I don't understand, just how? It's simple, the first Dragon King died. Uzumaki looked at Namikaze. Dragons who are under the house of the Dragon Palace are the strongest. When the dragons die, they later on are reborn through an egg that brings them back, which, when the new hatchling is born, they retain all the memories of the past life. When the last Dragon King died, his egg brought upon 2 new-born dragon hatchlings instead of 1, both holding their predecessor's memories, but his power was split to them. An ultimate dragon became 2 dragons of untold might. Uzumaki began to rub his shoulders. However, while they hold memories of their past life, their new life is different. They can be stronger or weaker depending how long they lived in the past life. Elemental dragons gave up immortality, so they only live up to 500 to about 750 years. It is the same for the knights. Though aside from Acnologia, dragons of time and space and the Dragon King are immortal and can only die from something more powerful than themselves or against their own magic. Namikaze narrowed his eyes a bit. This world seems a bit complex with the status of dragons. Now I can start from the beginning. Acnology had told me that about over millennia ago in my world, before the Dragon King died, Morpheus was a dragon of the Dragon Palace and was the 3rd advisor to the Dragon King. Morpheus was a majestic and prideful dragon. He gave all beings the satisfaction to dream, and he idolized the Dragon King. However, it had all changed when the Dragon King accepted a young boy to become the first Dragon Slayer to exist, and not just anyone, the Dragon King's Dragonslayer. Naruto smirked. From what I could tell, Morpheus couldn't stand the idea of a Dragon Slayer to exist, let alone a human having that kind of power in their hand. It made him believe the king was weak. In believing so, he challenged the Dragon King to a battle to claim the title. However, Morpheus was miserably defeated, and in an attempt to save himself from humiliation, he tried to kill the Dragon Slayer only to be sent to the outer world. A world of distortion, holding disorder and a negative amount of magical energy. And once the dragon was within this distortion realm, the magic within the world had infused itself within his own magical essence and continued to absorb into his body until his whole entire being was altered. Namikaze said to finish up the story through his prediction. That's more or less correct. Acnology had told me that he was forced into the outer world and was sealed there, which possibly led to him evolving through means of entering the distortion realm, Uzumaki said. Namikaze narrowed his eyes, processing this information through his head as he carefully thought through the situation at hand. He didn't know much details about the enemy aside from getting historical knowledge, and even that would not be of necessary help to him unless there was an absolute reason that he was brought here as well. He had to think through this with time. Tell me something, what do you believe his range of power to be? From what it seems he has just awoken from hibernating in the seal, so he should be weak at the moment if I am correct. Namikaze told Uzumaki. Don't be so certain. The young blonde spoke, he was sealed. That does not mean he was frozen over time or anything of that sort. This place has changed him and he has grown in power, which is how he possibly broke the seal. By my estimation, with him causing to distort time and space itself, something that even the dragons of time and void can do. Then he is around their level, power-wise. In magic standards, however, I would say maybe somewhere close to agnologia. So you cannot say for certain, not unless I fight him. Morpheus should be considered different under dragon standards. He's an abomination of dragons and a dragon of aberrant nature. If there was anything I should know, it's this. He wants revenge and he wants to take over, and he believes he has the skill. Toes scoffed at the remark. Like a dragon of that standard has the gall to face agnologia with such arrogance. His pride makes him too overconfident. Says the one who is overconfident in his own skills. Uzumaki said. He could feel a draft coming towards him as a blade of wind soon was coming toward him from the namikaze. However, his body faded out from in front of the oncoming namikaze who was about to strike upon him. He, no later than a second, appeared behind the elder blonde. Though I can say the same for me. I underestimated a certain number of opponents, including yourself, though seeing some of your skills I can tell where your skill set is in. Namikaze narrowed his eyes as he turned to look at the blonde. His eyes observed the younger blonde's body as he noticed that the seal was gone. How did you get out of that seal? I constructed it to completely bind enemies. You are not the only one who is good at seals. I may not excel at such a good skill like yourself. I do have an understanding for them and pretty good at countering them. With a little inside help and some background knowledge I managed to remove it with a few minutes. It was a little more complicated compared to the seals I have seen, but the similarities are vast. Said Uzumaki as he smirked. I would like to get more into them, but I prefer to master all my other skills to the fullest before doing so. However, I would like to avoid doing anything that may be connected with people I greatly distaste. Namikaze furrowed his eyes as he looked at the blonde. I am not done with you yet. Well, you are now. I have no need to tell you anything else. Do you understand me? The Uzumaki said in a cold tone, his eyes becoming pale. You may not fear me, but you should know that I am not afraid by a doppelganger from another dimension that not only is unstable, but looks more like the man I despise the more I look at you. Namikaze snarled. What right do you have to call me unstable, hatchling? By your nature, your psychology is almost like that of a person who has dissociative personality disorder. However, you separated the boundaries that should have never been split apart for a Dragonslayer. Naruto Uzumaki stared at his counterpart. I know what happens to a Dragonslayer when being consumed by their draconian nature, and that is something I will not have in my presence. However, I will have to make an exception for this due to the fact that we may need to work together to get back to our right places. Why in the name of Zareth would I work with the likes of you? You are a hatchling, 100 years too early to consider yourself equal to me. Namikaze said. I can handle this on my own. What makes you think we need to join forces to defeat this so-called abomination? You may have experience, but I learn as fast as I can move. My IQ is higher than most human peons in the world. Uzumaki crossed his arms. Though the reason for us to join forces is simple. Theories. 1. If I know myself, then that means I know some of you, and that means you won't use the means of Dragon Force unless it was someone equivalent to Agnologia's power. However, pride allows you not to use it against someone other than Agnologia or possibly someone you despise. The Namikaze growled lightly, getting a correct answer from the other blonde. Another reason is because we do not know Morpheus's plans for us or his strengths. Finding and knowing these main key points in the near future will benefit us from taking him down. Lastly, is because I have the right just as much as you do to kill the fucker. Namikaze narrowed his eyes and frowned. Glowing eyes stared at the other set. If we join forces, you better hope to not slow me down. I would hate to kill myself. Please, you couldn't catch me at a third of my speed. What makes you think you can catch me at my fullest? Uzumaki held his hand out. We can kill each other later anyway. I have a pair of dragon skin boots to make. Namikaze smirked as he reached out for the other blonde's hand and gripped firmly. For the first time ever, the sons of the apocalypse allied themselves to one another.